How is it going, everyone? And thank you for tuning into this episode of the Hanging Up the Boots podcast. We are like 6 months into the coronavirus pandemic insanity. 2020 has been the most insane year to date, sort of. And I'm sure you guys are all feeling it, so I appreciate your continued support of the show. And on this episode, it's going to be a little different. My guest today is not a veteran. She is still active duty. She is the wife of Scot Seitz, who has been on the show. If you haven't listened to my interview with Scott, please go do so now. It is hilarious, and as I think I say in the episode, it'll inform a lot of the jokes that we make. But his wife, Abby, was my guest for this episode, and she is currently a recruiter out of Boulder, like the Boulder, Denver area in Colorado. So my original goal was to have you guys send in any questions that you may have had about the recruiting process, or maybe why your recruitment went one way or another. That didn't end up happening, so I'm going to be doing that for the next time I have Abby on the show, and I'll tell you about that after the episode. So without further ado, please welcome your friendly hometown recruiter, Abigail Seitz. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we have Abby Seitz here. She is actually one of the first people that I met in my tenure in the Marine Corps, and she is unlike most of the people that I've had on the show so far, because she is still in the Marine Corps. She's not a veteran yet. She probably never will be. You're going to be in the Marine Corps until the end of time. So, yeah. If anybody will, it's gonna be you. She's Scott's wife. If you haven't listened to the episode with Scot Seitz, please do, because as he is oft mentioned on the show, he's a bit of a deity in our community, as is Abby. So go ahead and listen to that. Pause this now and go ahead and listen to that first. It'll kind of inform some of the jokes that we make probably later on. But we'll just start off, as we always do, by having Abby introduce herself and tell us how she got into the Marine Corps. So, Abby, it's really good to have you on, dude.
Yeah, I've listened to every single episode that you have.
Wow, thank you. I'm flattered.
Yeah, it's fun to be like on here now, and just kind of. I don't know. I've listened to every episode, and I mean, I won't name names, but there's been a lot of episodes where there's been really great insight. Now, like, I know I'm not a veteran, but any transition in life comes with growth and insight and perspective and all that kind of stuff. So, some of the guests you've had on that I've talked to, one, it's just fun because I know them, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh, what's up, Rios? How you doing? Right.
Yeah.
Also did not know that he was living in Australia.
Yeah. So, yeah. He's all over the place. He's in Australia now, and he's in the process of getting ready to go to college in Germany.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He said he was moving there. That's just what that was really cool to me. Mm-hmm. I really like. He was one that. Okay, I will name names. He was one that had a lot of insight. Yeah. But yeah, so just everybody kind of their own growth and stuff they've learned about themselves and the world and others and relationships. It's given me insight as well, even though I'm not a veteran. So I don't know. Hopefully, I can say some wise words.
Well, we appreciate it, man. I sure appreciate having you on, and I appreciate the glowing review of the show and the people that I've had on. It's been definitely helpful, hopefully to a lot of other people, but especially for me, just being able to talk to everybody. So I'm glad that that's contributing to the listeners in the way that I've intended. So you are like the eponymous the perfect example of a career Marine. As is Scott. You're perfect for each other. I've often joked that because Scott is now going officer, that one day you and Scott are going to be the first pair of Commandant, Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps married couple. So
if you don't think that's our goal from the beginning, you're wrong.
I knew it was going to happen, and I'm not surprised. If anybody can achieve it, it is the two of you. So
that is 100% what we're going for.
Yes, I hope to see it, in however many years, to read on like Task and Purpose or Terminal Lance or something. Hopefully it's still around. That, first married couple at the helm of the United States Marine Corps. I'm like, please tell me it says Seitz on there somewhere. Like, please tell me.
Oh, hell yeah. We're running this thing.
I'm so excited. I would rejoin. If you guys were at the wheel, I would go back in. No, that's a lie.
I'm holding you to that.
I don't hold me to it. But so what? I always start with the phrase of like, what landed you on the yellow footprints? Like, what got you in the mindset and prompted you to kind of like go down that path? Was it like a family thing or?
So this is going to be a fun one.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. So I joined later than most people. I was not out of high school, I don't want to go to college. I got no better options. Like that was right.
That's me.
A lot of people's story, not mine. Okay. I won't go all the way back to my childhood. So when I was in high school, I was like a junior in high school, my brother joined the Army, right? He went Army infantry, and that was basically my first and only exposure to the military. And so for me, that formed the foundation and really the whole picture of what military was. Army infantry. That was my entire understanding of the military. I did not know that there were separate branches. I did not know that there was anything other than infantry. I thought military equated to infantry and combat and all that kind of stuff. So I really had a skewed mental picture of what the military was. And then like once I joined the Marine Corps, looking back, I realized there was other interactions that I had where I was just too stupid to realize what they were, right? Like I had a friend who was in the Marine Corps Reserves. I knew he was in the Marine Corps. I knew he was in the reserves. I knew he went to drill every weekend, but it still meant nothing to me, right? So
out of sight, out of mind kind of a situation.
Yeah, I didn't really have anything it wasn't relevant to me, so I didn't really think about it. So I kind of approached it with this idea of that everything military is Army infantry. So when it came to the idea of military after high school, it was a no. It didn't even cross my mind. I also never saw a recruiter in high school.
Really? Where did you grow up?
Well, again, looking back, I did meet one time, and there was a recruiting office right next door to my friend's house. But again, like it didn't mean anything to me at the time. So it wasn't until I was thinking back where I was like, wait a second. Right. So anyway, but when we talk about recruiting, I'll touch back on that. I grew up in a really small town. Okay. But anyway, so what got me to the Marine Corps? So I graduated high school. I managed a movie theater for a couple of years. And then when I was 21, I got married and I moved to North Carolina.
Fun.
And then, yeah. Listen, you want to do a whole episode on marriage? I got you there. Okay. So anyway, I moved to North Carolina with my new husband, and I had tried going to community college for like 2 semesters. It was horrible. I hated it. And so I was like, whatever, screw it. I'll just drop out, got married, moved to North Carolina. My then husband went to college. And so I just kind of like did nothing while he went to college. We were super poor. I lived in a house that had previously been a chicken coop. So
what?
It was, I've lived in a chicken coop twice in my life. That was not the first time I've lived in a chicken coop.
That is 2 times more than I've ever heard of anybody living in a chicken coop. How small was this town that you were? Are you talking about like physically, like the houses were small, and so living in a chicken coop was normal, or was it just a relatively, like, population wise was small? Are we talking about like a doll size town?
Okay, no. So the town that I grew up in, really small farm town, that's not where I lived in a chicken coop.
Like, that makes it worse.
So the first time was when I was a kid. I was like 9 years old. And my whole family lived there. And then the second time was me as an adult, newly married. My husband was going to college, so we were broke college students. And when I say I lived in a chicken coop, what I mean is that prior to it being converted to an apartment, it housed animals.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Like, they cleared the animals out, laid down some peel and stick linoleum, put an oven in one of the spaces, and called it an apartment.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's college poverty at like the peak level.
Yeah. So when people are like, oh my God, the barracks sucks, I'm like, let's talk about this.
You're like, been there, done that, dude. Don't worry.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah. I was like, you have carpet. Yeah. So anyway, did that. He dropped out after a semester, and then we moved in with his parents, and then we got an apartment of our own. But basically, for like the first couple of years of marriage, we were just kind of like aimlessly moving around, like not having any direction. Like, he kept insisting that he wanted to go back to school. I thought school was stupid and a waste of money. I tried to get jobs, but really I worked in the college bookstore, and then I worked in a grocery store, and then I got a temp job with, when you go to a hotel and the key that opens your door, the little credit card looking key, and then the little door hanger that says do not disturb, that kind of stuff. Okay. So there's one company in the world that makes those. Oh. And then, yeah, I did sales for that company.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, so I worked there for a little bit, but mostly it was like this dead end cycle of, we're never going to be comfortable financially. We have no direction. We have no purpose. What is this what we're going to do for the next, 50 years, is just work these like aimless minimum wage jobs and live in shitty apartments,
Yeah.
So after we were married for a couple of years, he came home one day and he was like, I'm joining the Marine Corps. And I was like, what? This nowhere, right? He had never said anything about the military. And as I will tell you when we get to talking about recruiting, he's like, no, this has been my lifelong dream. Like, I've always wanted to do this my whole life. And I was like, funny, you forgot to mention that when we were dating, right?
Or
like
in the last 2 years of being married. It's never come up one time.
Yeah, this whole time. Like, oh, you've always wanted to do this your whole life, and yet this is the first I'm hearing about it, right?
Of course.
But what was funny is that my ex-husband was lazy, out of shape, overweight. He was the baby of the family, super whiny. Everybody did everything for him. He complained about everything. And so I was like, what do you mean you're going to join the Marine Corps? Like, since when? From where? Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I was like, okay, whatever. You want to do this? Let's do this. So we got in the car. We drove to the recruiting office. He was too scared to get out of the car.
Great
to go talk
start.
to the... Right. That's
Great
what
start. Okay.
That's what I said. I was like, you can't even get out of the car, dude. Right. So, okay. So we drove home. And I was like, okay, clearly that's not happening. A few weeks later, he's like, no, seriously, I'm going to join the Marine Corps. Okay, let's go to the recruiter's office. Too scared to get out of the car. And I was like, put up or shut up, dude. Like, what the fuck are you doing? So, yeah. So at this point, I'm like, shut your mouth. Like, what? Like, this is not happening, right? So then he's like, you're unsupportive.
Yeah, like, it's your fault that he's a...
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's why he couldn't go into the recruiter's office, it's because I was unsupportive. Had nothing to do with him being chicken shit. So anyway, third time he comes home from work and he's like, okay, I'm going to join the Marine Corps, but I called the recruiter and he's going to come to our house. So that way, I can't back out of it. Solid plan, dude. Okay.
Yeah. Just bring boot camp in your unit to your house too later. Have the drill instructors PT you on your living room carpet right there. Perfect.
Yeah, for sure. And I was like, okay, whatever. A recruiter's coming to our house. You want to join the Marine Corps. This is obviously going to affect both of us. I have questions. So I sat down and I wrote out multiple notebook pages worth of questions, right? Everything you could possibly think of. Where do we live? What do we do? What does he do? How often do we move? What does he get paid? Do I have to go with him? Do I have to stay home? Where can I go? Right? All of these questions, I wrote out multiple notebook pages. So the recruiter comes over and he sits down at our kitchen table and he starts with his spiel, which now as a recruiter is hilarious because I do the exact same spiel. It's been 10 years. I do the exact same spiel. Cracks me up.
Perfect. Hey, if it works, it works. Got you in one way or another.
Clearly it does. So we're sitting at the kitchen table. I'm asking all of these questions and everything the recruiter is saying, every answer he gives me, I'm like, this is amazing. This is too good to be true. This is there's no way that you're telling me the truth. There's got to be a catch, all this kind of stuff, right? And he's like, I mean, the catch is you got to work your ass off for it. The catch is that it's hard, but I'm not lying about pay and insurance and traveling and all that kind of stuff. Because at the time, we were making, bottom of the barrel minimum wage, paying out the ass for health insurance. And it's I basically went to work so I could afford to go to work. I went to work so I could buy enough food to live and pay my medical insurance and put a roof over my head so that I had to play a place to sleep so I could go to work.
Yeah.
That was basically it, And so the recruiter is saying all this stuff. And by the time we got to the end of it, the recruiter looked at me and he was like, do you want to be a Marine? And I was like, no, gosh, no, you misunderstand. You're here for him, not me. And my ex-husband was sitting there silently the whole time. And he looked at me and he was like, well, what do you think? Do you think I should join? And I was like, if you don't become a Marine, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
You go do this, because at that time, all I was looking at was, this is a way to break the cycle. This is a way for us to have decent pay, decent insurance, to get out of North Carolina, which is what we were trying to do, all this kind of stuff, right? And so that's how I saw it at the time. So he joins the Marine Corps, complains the entire way through, every PT, every pool function. This is so stupid. I don't understand why I have to do this.
You're well, you're a big fat lard, buddy. You gotta get your shit in, the gut check that, looking back on boot camp, it wasn't really that earth-shatteringly difficult, but if you're living, a cyclical, sedentary, junk, gas station food eating, never working out lifestyle, that's a hard transition to make because it's 0 to 100. There's no the PT function or the pool functions and everything are supposed to be kind of a warm-up period where you get going so that when you're in boot camp you can focus on things other than, oh my god, everything hurts all the time, running every morning sucks, so come on, man, get it together. And that's that should have been my first red flag, that he was complaining about going to a pool function once a month on a Saturday morning for 4 hours. But whatever, that was just him. I was used to him complaining about everything, so I didn't really think anything of it. But in the time that from when he enlisted until he went to boot camp,
and then all the way through boot camp, I researched. I read and I Googled and I watched YouTube videos and I read articles and I read magazines and I read books, and I just soaked up everything Marine Corps. Like if it was red, blue, and gold, I had it, you know. I read everything, I learned everything. I watched documentaries. I I made friends with somebody that was in one of the documentaries, and we're still friends now. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but yeah, I hit him up randomly. I was like, "Hey, are you the person that was in the documentary?" So anyway, I could not get enough of the Marine Corps, and at that point, like I had started with, this is a way for us to get out of this cycle that we're in, and the more I learned, the more it transitioned into a love of the culture, the family, the brotherhood, the pride, the history, like all those intangible things, you know? Mm-hmm. So by the time my ex-husband graduated boot camp, like, you know, everybody's dismissed. I run across the parade deck and the first words out of my mouth to him were, "Now it's my turn. Like, I'm doing this." Yeah. To which he said, "No, you're not." And I was like, "Yeah, we'll talk about it."
Which means we'll shelf this, and yes, I am.
In this, and then yeah, I am. Yeah. So then he went on to MCT and then on to MOS school. He complained the entire time.
And what was his MOS?
Bulk fuel.
Ah, okay. That yeah. For those of you who don't know what bulk fuel specialists are, I don't know the intricacies of the job, but if there are any, but the only experience that I had with bulk fuel specialists was they put gas in my truck.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So there is some elements of the job where they have to, kind of like water dogs, like they have to test the chemical makeup of the fuel. They have to know the difference between the fuels, right? Like what is gasoline versus what is JP8 versus what is, I don't know, oil. I mean, I don't really know, but there is some where they have to know the different types of fuel. And then they also have to know hazmat procedures for storing the fuel.
That makes sense.
So there's stuff like that. But when we were at DLI and every time somebody was falling behind in class and they're like, "If you don't fucking get your grades up, we're going to send you out to be bulk fuel." I giggled internally because it was hilarious. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so he graduated, he did his thing. He complained the entire time. He got stationed at Camp Lejeune. And I, like along that way, I promised him, "Okay, I will wait until your first duty station before I enlist, right? We'll let you get like stable before I go in, right?" So Camp Lejeune, duty station, I drove the U-Haul into our apartment parking lot, got in my car, and drove straight to the recruiter's office. Like I didn't even unpack the car. Yeah. So I walk into the recruiter's office. I was like, "Hey, I want to be a Marine." And they did their whole thing. And I was like, "No, you don't understand. You don't have to like teach me anything. I already know. I've been researching for a year and a half. Just tell me where to sign." Mm-hmm. And they said, "Okay, well, you're going to need a spouse statement." So what a lot of people don't know is that if you're married, your spouse has to sign a statement of understanding giving you permission to join is a little bit too intense of a phrase, but you can't join unless they sign that statement of understanding. Yeah. So what the statement of understanding says is that I understand that my spouse is joining the military, that they may be required to deploy or travel, and I'm not always going to be allowed to go with them. It's just basically a statement saying, I understand what my spouse is getting into and what that means for me.
That makes sense. Yeah. Because, I mean, otherwise, how, what's to stop Joe Schmuckatelli from wherever with his high school age wife saying, like, I'm joining the Marine Corps. And she's like, okay, what does that mean? He's like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. And then he signs all the paperwork without really telling her anything. And then he's like, cool, by the way, we're moving. That makes sense. I kind of get that.
Yeah. So, and that's why I say it's not them giving you permission to join, but it is making sure that your spouse is informed of what you're doing and what it means.
I'm sure that causes a lot of problems for recruiters, though.
Yes.
Yeah. That makes sense.
My ex-husband refused to sign it.
Yeah. That's what I thought was coming.
Yeah. So I walked into the Marine Corps recruiting office in Jacksonville, North Carolina, right behind the Walmart. And I said, I want to be a Marine. They said, great, get your husband to sign this. And everything stopped. So he refused to sign it. We fought about it for a while. And at that point, I knew I wanted to be a linguist. I had since learned that there was more than just infantry.
Right. Yeah. In your year and a half of research.
Yeah, exactly. Figured out that I wanted to be a linguist. And so my ex-husband was like, well, if you want to be a linguist, every branch of the military has linguists. Just do any branch other than the Marine Corps. Just don't be a Marine.
Why?
And
I mean, don't get me wrong. I usually tell people the same thing because it's not so much it depends on why people are going in. Like if you're going in for those intangible things that you were mentioning, I'm not saying that the other branches don't have that. It's just that is like the pillar of the Marine Corps is the brotherhood and the camaraderie and the unity through shared suffering. Like that's not a small component about what makes the Marine Corps unique. And so if people are like, well, I want to go in because I want to pay for college and that military stuff doesn't really matter too much to me. I'm just doing it for the benefits and to get out of my hometown and bumfuck wherever. I'm like, okay, well, maybe look into the Air Force or something because at least that way you'll get what you want and you'll have an easier time. Yeah, you'll have it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he so what he said was that, so my ex-husband was super religious and super sheltered. And the kind of frat boy culture of the Marine Corps was super offensive to him. And so what he said was, I don't want Marines talking about my wife the way I've heard them talk about women. That was what he said.
Surprisingly honorable, but I don't buy it.
What I think it was he didn't want me being better than him.
Yeah. Or being surrounded by other guys that were better than him.
Yeah, also that. So anyway, I compromised and I agreed and I went to the Air Force and I actually enlisted with the Air Force first. And I went to one pool function with the Air Force. So knowing what my ex-husband had done for his pool functions, that was my expectation, right? That was kind of the preparation that I had. So the Air Force recruiter, who is this overweight chick, she's like, oh, we have a pool function this weekend. And I said, cool. Okay. So should I wear PT gear? Is that what we're doing? And she was like, oh no, we don't PT. And I was like,
at all?
Okay. At all.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, well, what are we doing then? And she's like, oh, we're probably just going to practice a little bit of maybe drill movements, but really we're just going to have a barbecue and eat and stuff. And I was like,
oh no.
Okay. So family day. So I'm thinking okay, maybe this is just I just happen to hit the month where they do more of team building and getting to know you more than boot camp preparation. Right. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So I show up in jeans and t-shirt and she proceeds to attempt to teach us drill. except she couldn't remember how to do the drill movements. And so she's like, okay, I'm going to teach you guys left face. So you're going to pivot on so I think it's your left toe. I think it's right heel, left heel, right. And I'm standing there like, oh my God. Like, you knew you were going to teach us this. You didn't want to maybe brush up and at least look like you knew what you were doing, right? So we did drill for like a miserable 20 minutes. I learned the whole thing. And then she was like, well, let's finish up. Let's sing the Air Force song. Does anybody know the Air Force song? And me, like everything I did with the Marine Corps, I did with the Air Force. I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to join the Air Force, I'm going to know everything there is to know about the Air Force. And so I dug in deep to the Air Force, right? So I knew the Air Force song.
Okay.
She did not.
Oh, no.
She wasn't asking, like, does anybody know it? Please sing loudly for everybody else. It was, does anybody know it? Because I don't.
Oh, no.
Can anybody lead us in the Air Force song? That's what it was. So that was my first pool function with the Air Force. And I went home and I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, this is miserable. But at the same time, I was like, well, shit, I'm going to be the best there is at this. So might as well make the most of it.
I'm going to go in and I'm going to win at the Air Force. Like,
yeah. Basically going to crush this.
Yeah.
So anyway, so even that, I was like, not super comfortable about it, but whatever, I'd made my decision, right? And then one night I had a dream that I was on Paris Island in an Air Force uniform. Except I wasn't on the island, I was in the ocean off of Paris Island. Yeah, so I'm swimming in the ocean, and you know how Paris Island, they're always telling you like, wait.
No, I went to San Diego.
God damn it. Okay, so Paris Island is an island, right?
I imagined.
What they tell you when you get there is there's one bridge on and off this island. It's the only way on and off. The only other option you have is to brave the crocodiles in the swamps.
Okay.
You can try and avoid the bridge if you want, but there's crocodiles everywhere because it's the swamp. So that's what they tell us. So I dreamt that I was swimming in the crocodile-infested waters around Paris Island. And my choice was I could swim to Paris Island, get on land and be safe, or I could swim down the coast to, whatever the next town is and get on land there. And I was so embarrassed to be seen on Paris Island in an Air Force uniform that I decided to keep swimming with the crocodiles and try to get to the next town.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's when I decided to leave the Air Force.
Yeah, wow.
I was like, I'm embarrassed to be in the Air Force uniform in my dream. There's no way I can do this in real life. So I woke up, I told my ex-husband, I was like, listen, I can't join the Air Force. I have to be a Marine. And at that point, he was like, okay, fine. He relented. He signed the paperwork. And I went to Paris Island 3 months later.
That was a whirlwind. Holy moly.
Not your typical path.
No, but also kind of enlightening in a way, because it informs so many of your personality traits and like how you were when I knew you in the Marine Corps and your ability to be a recruiter now, for real. Because if you really, if you were so like myopically set on the Marine Corps in a good way, like, just singularly set on the Marine Corps because of these, the intangibles and the pride and stuff like that, that's important to be a recruiter, because I feel like a lot of we'll talk about the HIST system and everything, I'm sure, but I feel like a lot of recruiters are there because it was either never get promoted again or go be a recruiter, and they're just like, this sucks, cold calling high school kids and stuff like that. But if you like really genuinely believe in the spiel and you have that story to be like, this is what it took for me to get into the Marine Corps, you can do it. You can do it. I'm sure that makes a lot of sense. And then, we'll skip forward a little bit. So you knew you wanted to. What made you want to be a linguist? Because I didn't even know about it when I was enlisting. I didn't even know that was an option. I wanted to go intelligence, and I was 17, and so they were like, well, you're pretty good at language. I took 4 years of Spanish in high school, like you said. And they were like, so you can do this. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't really care. And they were like, well, there's $10,000 in there for you if you want. And I was like, where do I sign?
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was actually, so I did Spanish for 6 years in middle school and high school, and traveled abroad several times to Spanish speaking countries, really loved it. And that was actually part of the original conversation when the recruiter came to our house with my ex-husband. He asked me, well, what are you interested in? And I said, language. And he said, so be a linguist. And I was like, what? That's a thing?
Yeah.
So I knew from really early on that linguist was a thing, and I kind of, set my sights on that from the very beginning.
Oh.
And then, so I took the ASVAB, scored high enough on that, took the DLAB, scored high enough on that, and yeah, there it was.
Right on. So, you go through boot camp. Any notable stuff about boot camp? I mean, we've gone over boot camp a gazillion times on the show. It's up to you.
And I just want to say I was the guide.
Of course you were. Of course you were.
By which I immediately follow it with, no one cares.
Yeah. You beat me to the joke, man. For obviously the listeners didn't hear the pre show conversation, but we were joking about the fact that there's like a certain brand of military comedy, and one of the main jokes is that nobody cares if you were the boot camp guide. But all jokes aside, that is impressive. And again, I'm not at all surprised given your single-minded focus on just winning the Marine Corps.
Yeah. But funny enough, I was, so there is some politics to boot camp. A lot of people get really wrapped up in it, and they don't realize that there are politics in boot camp. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of people, they're like, yeah, I was a squad leader and then I got fired and it was bullshit and blah, blah. It's like getting fired from squad leader most likely had nothing to do with you. Like, unless you royally fucked it up, it had nothing to do with you. Like, the drill instructors literally have on their calendar, fire squad leader, pick new one. So a lot of times people, they're like, I would have been guide the whole time, but I got fired and it was a bullshit reason. It's like, no, they had it on their calendar to switch you out. Now, they just found some absurd reason. So a lot of it has to do with drill competitions. So drill instructors, they get graded on how well they do, how well the recruits perform. So if you're a good guide, you motivate, you lead, you inspire, you do all these things that, whatever you can do at a recruit level, but you suck at drill, you're not going to be the guide for initial or final drill. They're going to find a reason to fire you, right? Like, oh, your bootlace is untied, you can't be guide, you're fired. They find a reason to fire you, and they swap you out with somebody who's good at drill. And then that person will probably get fired like 2 weeks later because, thank you very much, we don't need you anymore.
That
right?
makes
Like,
so much sense.
Yeah. So in my platoon, the first girl to be made guide was the loudest during, what's it called? Like pickup, right? Like when you're getting your gear issued and that kind of stuff during pickup. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She was loud. She was super loud. So they made her the guide. And then they found out that her IST, like her induction IST was shitty. And so they're like, well, shit, she's out of shape. My IST was good. And then we were doing the O course and they were like, yo, get up here, run the O course twice. And I was like, okay. So I ran it through twice. And then they're like, you're a guide now. I was like, okay. That's like, yeah, it's all about what they need in the moment,
Right.
to make themselves look good. So so I was guide. Anyway, I was guide through a large portion of boot camp, but drill not my strong suit. So I got fired right before final drill.
Mm.
They put somebody else in, and I took it really personally. But I'm friends with one of my drill instructors now, so she's the one that explained all this to me. So I no
Oh,
longer take it personally.
got it. That makes sense.
um,
It's
but
so
anyway,
weird
so
to me
I got,
that people like it's so weird to explain to people that like you can now be friends with your drill like I have several of my drill instructors on Facebook, and
yeah,
like I like their pictures and stuff sometimes, and to see them like a be just normal people is super weird.
yeah,
But like the idea that, here's so and so who like whose sole purpose was to shit all over me for 13 weeks is like this really cool
yeah,
person that I know now.
yeah. She lives an hour away. We hang out,
That's awesome.
and yeah, and now her son is looking at joining the Marine Corps, so I'm helping him.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The circle of
Um,
life.
I know it comes back around. So anyway, so yeah, she explained this all to me. So I got fired, and then I was really pushing for honor grad. That's really what I wanted. I wanted to be honor grad,
Mm-hmm.
and they, the girl that they put up for honor grad was an OCS dropout. So if you drop out of officer candidate school, you have the option of going enlisted still. Like, it doesn't prohibit you from going enlisted. So that's what she did. She went enlisted, and she sucked.
Really?
She sucked, man. Oh yeah, she sucked. I won't get into it, but she sucked. So when they said she was honor grad, I was like, what the fuck? Like, how is that even possible? You
Mm-hmm.
know? And again, it was explained to me, the platoon commander, the officer, is the one who kind of has final say on who's the honor grad. And because she was an OCS dropout, the platoon commander was like, oh, clearly she's officer material. She deserves to be honor grad or whatever. So
That's dumb.
yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of politics in boot camp. So for anybody that's a veteran or still in and is a little perturbed about something that happened in boot camp, like, if you're still salty about it, just know it was politics that had nothing to do with you, unless you straight up sucked, in which case have a little, self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know I sucked at drill. I'm okay with admitting it.
Yeah. I'm so mad I got fired from squad leader. Like, they said it was because I lost my rifle for 3 days, but I think it was something else. Like, no, that's on you, bro. Like,
Yeah, that's you.
like one of the guys in my platoon got fired from squad leader because he smuggled like so much peanut butter back from the chow hall,
Mm.
and like for the non-veteran people, you're like, what? Peanut butter is contraband? Like, what are you talking about? And I think it was probably just like a cleanliness thing. Like, if you have little packets of sugary, peanut butter everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
like you'll get ants.
Yeah, this is how you get ants.
Yeah, exactly. But they like explicitly tell you in boot camp, like, do not take this shit out of the chow hall. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that he had so much, like probably 50 something packets, like stuffed in like his war bag or whatever. And yeah, that was bad. But anyway, so we get to DLI.
Yeah.
You were Pashto, if I recall correctly.
Pashto. Yeah. Yeah, the language, it's not really a language. Yeah.
What do you mean?
There's no sentence structure. There's no grammar rules. The rules are made up. The vowels don't matter. And yeah, it's Pashto is, so Afghanistan is like 80% illiterate. So their language was not written down for a very, very, very long time. And when it did finally get written down, it got written down by non-Afghan, like non-native people.
Oh.
Yeah. And then they started like educating people. But there's so many tribes in Afghanistan, even like among the Pashtun tribe, there's sub tribes, there's like villages and stuff. And if you think about like, the colored pieces of wax that Crayola makes,
Mm-hmm.
what do you call that?
Crayons.
Okay, crayon, right? I also say crayon.
Or crayon. Yeah.
Right. And then I moved somewhere where people said crowns. And I was
Wrong.
like, the f is a crown?
No,
Like, what?
That's
You're
wrong.
just making up letters at this point, right? That's how Pashto is. So because it was never written down, you've got some people that say crayon, some that say crayon, some that say crown, but it's all the same word for the same thing. How do you write that? How do you spell that? You know, when you come in and start writing down a language, what is that word now? You know? And so much of it was just made up, where as long as it sounds similar, it's basically the same word. So like letters that sound alike, like P and F, right? If you say pish or you say fish, it kind of sounds similar. So those will be the same thing, right? You're like, what swims in the water and has fins? Like, oh, a fish. Well, I call it a pish, but we're talking about the same thing. So close enough.
That must have been a nightmare to study.
It's the worst.
Because that was the thing with Arabic, is that there is sentence structure and there are grammar rules, and they just elect to never use them. They're like, okay, like we would start every lesson and our professors would be like, okay, so we're going to learn about this measure of like verbs that are structured like this. And so we would do that for like 2 class periods. And then we'd come back from like our smoke break or whatever. And so we just spent 2 hours learning about this specific thing. And then we'd sit down and they'd be like, okay. And it'd be a new professor, because they, they swap every so often. And it'd be a new professor. And he's like, okay, so I understand that you were studying these specific, parameters. And what drew me to language is, especially like with Spanish, is it's very process oriented. You have a verb, it's conjugated this way, and in this tense it's conjugated this way, and you put the sentences together like this and it makes sense. Yeah. It's like you feed information in here, in English information, you put it through these different filters, and now you have Spanish, and it's going to be that way, barring, local slang or whatever. But with Arabic, you would learn these parameters for these specific things, and then he'd be like, okay, and that only works about 15% of the time. And the rest of the time, there are 5 or 6 different options that stem from these different grammatical exceptions. And we're like, so why did we spend all of this time learning something that we'll never use? And they would just be like, I don't know. That's how we do it. And you're like, oh my God, no. And so, yeah, that's... But having nothing holding it up, that had to be way worse.
Yeah. No rules. They pretended they had rules, but they really they didn't apply.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was rough. And then I had, so language, and then I was, yet again, I was guide. Actually did real things though. That one I'm proud of. I did a lot. I grew a lot as platoon guide at DLI. I learned a lot about leadership and management and people and expectations and communication, and I learned a lot. That one was beneficial. Yeah. And then I was also first deck NCO, which meant that I was responsible for all new incoming
and that's
people.
where I met you.
Yes. There's a whole generation of linguist Marines that are like, you're the first person I met. And I'm like, I know. And I still have the notebook where I wrote down everybody's name and phone number and everything from when they showed up.
That's adorable.
It is. It's super cute. I like to go back and read it and be like, oh my God, look at that. Private Minger.
Yeah. And now he's, well, I was going to say he's still in, but he's not. But that was a fun episode. We drank so much whiskey. But yeah, I was like putting away my little quick side note. I was like putting away my computer and stuff after recording that. And I was like, man, I'm like pretty buzzed right now. That was probably a disaster of an episode. I was probably talking out of my ass the whole time.
Yeah. But, so like, well, let's see if it's even intelligible. But
it wasn't that bad, but it was not very articulate. I'll just leave it at that. But that was one of the most fun podcasts I've ever done. And for those of you listening, really another quick side note, sorry. Justin is doing, he created a little bit of merchandise for his fundraiser. So click pause on this. Well, maybe not. But when you're done listening to this one, go to the podcast Instagram, go to Justin's page, check out his merch because it's for a really good cause. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I figured product placement.
Yeah, no, plug it, man.
But for charity foundations, I'm okay with doing that. But
plug it for sure.
Thanks. And then you got to radio.
Yeah. Got to radio. And I don't know if you know this, but when I was in Texas, we won the war. It was like the worst news I could have ever gotten. Right? Everybody's like, yeah, we won. We're withdrawing from Afghanistan. And I was like, no, go back.
You're like, I didn't get a chance to do anything.
Yeah. I was like, dude, I spent the last 2 years studying this shit. And now you're telling me we're leaving? Like, what the fuck? So I was not happy about that.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was disappointing. So I got to shitty. Yeah. Oh yeah. That was the worst. Yeah. I forget who it was, but whoever said they had fun in Texas can shove it up their ass.
Yeah. Who was that? I think it was it Justin? I think it was Justin.
I think it was Justin. Yeah.
He was like, yeah, I just like worked out.
It was very recently. Yeah, it was very recently. Yeah.
Psycho.
Yeah, it was the worst. So got to Radbin, and at that point they were putting all Pashto linguists in the skiff because, I mean, what else good were we? So I went to the skiff and worked night shift, and that was miserable. Night shift is horrible.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But mostly just kind of like sat around and did nothing for a while. Just like, cause I was like, while I was waiting for my clearance and stuff, I couldn't go into the skiff and I wasn't on a shift. So they put me, what's that thing where you like sit at the front desk of the skiff?
ECP.
ECP. Thank you. Yeah. I was on ECP for a month and I went on shift work for a while. I did corporal's course. I did McMap. I belted up. I just kind of did random Marine Corps things for a little while. Just kind of kept myself busy, did whatever I could to, try and be a good Marine and get promoted and, have a career and whatnot. And then I got put on the MU deployment. So I was so Scott and I did back-to-back MUs. He did the 13th, came back, and then my 11th MU replaced him.
Right. I couldn't remember if you went right before us or right after us.
Right after, yeah. My MU replaced yours.
That's right, because you guys did your wedding right before you guys had to. Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, we planned our wedding for the very, very, very short amount of time in between when Scott got back and when I left. And the entire thing was basically like a giant Hail Mary that the Marine Corps didn't change the dates. Like, please don't extend Scott. Please don't move my date up. Please, like, every night was like, praying to the Marine Corps gods, sacrificing PFC chevrons, like, please, 8-pound, 9-ounce baby Jesus, do not let these change.
Sacrificing PFC.
You gotta do what you gotta do, man.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's funny. No, I'm sure that was super stressful. But I mean, it worked out, and your wedding was kick ass. That was so much fun.
Oh yeah. No, the whole thing worked out. I mean, it could not have been better. I mean, maybe like, not leaving for 6 months, 10 days after my wedding.
Yeah.
could have been better, but we knew it was coming. So did that to myself. But people are always like, oh, where'd you go for your honeymoon? And I'm like, Bahrain, alone.
It was kind of a spur of the moment thing. Like I didn't really have a say.
Yeah. But I did get to spend a month in Hawaii right after my wedding. Again, alone. But
yeah,
I went to Hawaii for a month for my honeymoon.
That's pretty cool. Were you were working in the skiff there while they were transiting out?
In theory, I'm sorry if you hear my dog snoring. That is what that noise is.
Oh, it's okay. Penelope's sleeping like right there. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. He's sitting next to me. He's part Boston Terrier, so he gets the like real loud snores.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Hawaii was really weird. So you remember at first ride, the skiff was 24/7. Like it didn't matter. Holidays, weekends, nights, mornings, it didn't matter. The skiff was going.
Yeah.
The skiff in Hawaii, at least at that time that I was there, they only operated from like 8 to 3 Monday through Friday. And it was closed like for 96s and long weekends. And, we're having a battalion run today, so the skiff is closed.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Also kind of miserable because using the skiff to skate out of battalion and company level shit was like elite.
Yeah, but then also like I'm supposed to be supporting the ship that's transiting through the Pacific, and I have to tell these dudes who are stuck on a ship, hey, I'm sorry I can't support you because the skiff is closed for the 4-day weekend, so I'm just going to be chilling in Hawaii for 96 hours while you guys are stuck on the boat. That sucked.
Yeah.
It really, and that's the thing about the Marine Corps is, everybody talks about like, oh my God, it sucks so bad. And, oh, these people had it easier and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, sometimes it's nice to like get the hookup and not have to be completely in the shit, maybe just like, go up to your knees in the shit. I'm just going to wade in the shit. I'm not going to full on swim. But at the same time, if another Marine is full on in the shit and you're not, you feel really bad about it.
If you're a good person, important caveat.
If you're a good person.
And if you care about that person, like perfect example, my former OIC, whom I loathe, it is well documented on this show, she went to MARSOC after our deployment. She went to MSOB. And she was an android. She had no human feelings or empathy and could not understand we mere mortals at all.
Right.
And so she relied on the power of her rank to do anything because we despised her, and her binary code robo brain could not decipher why we hated her so much. So naturally it was because we were just filthy degenerate enlisted, and she was this pure ivory tower officer. So when she went to MSOB, which is a strict meritocracy and rank doesn't mean so much, she had a terrible fucking time, and I was there for it. I not physically, but like, oh my God, the karmic justice and the comeuppance was just c'est magnifique. I loved it. Oh, I heard about that, and it just made my whole day.
Yeah. So, when you, and that's, who karma's a bitch.
Yeah. So, but I do understand where you're coming from. Where like, a couple guys from our deployment went to Bahrain early to work at the naval station there and do basically the same thing we were doing, or you were doing. And they were like put up in apartments, and they were on per diem and stuff. And yeah, they felt really, really bad about it. Yeah.
It's like in Zombieland when Woody Harrelson's character is like crying and dabbing his with cash.
Exactly.
Like, listen, guys, I'm so sorry you're stuck on this ship, and I'm here getting per diem in Bahrain. Just like wiping tears away with cash. Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing though is that they were just lonesome. Like, we were all like, admittedly, like it sucked being on the ship, but like these guys that like we had done the entire workup together and we were super close with, like we were all together on the ship, like playing D&D and, doing whatever and hating our lives, but at least hating our lives together. And they were, getting per diem and stuff, and that's juicy, but they also were like by themselves in a foreign country in an apartment doing nothing. And it's not like they could talk to us regularly, you know?
Yeah. So I was in Bahrain. It was me, our AOIC, and two other guys. And yeah, the lack of camaraderie. And it's not that me and the other guys hated each other. Like we got along really well. We liked each other. We had fun. But you know, there's 3 of us to work 24 hours. So we're dividing it 1, 2, 3. And we only see each other when we're changing over. Right. Like, hey, I'm here to replace you. Oh, okay, cool. Hi, thanks. Bye.
Coffee's on. See ya. Yeah.
Yeah. And like all the guys lived together. I was the only female. I lived in a completely different building. I lived a half a mile away from the guys. So it wasn't even like, oh, we live in the same barracks and we can hang out in the smoke pit. It wasn't even that. Like I was a half mile away from them in my own building.
Right.
And, you know, and that's what it was, you know, I gave myself the night shift because like I was the senior analyst and I didn't want to give one of my guys the shittiest shift. So I took the night shift, and so I would get up at, you know, 10:30 at night. I would get up and I would walk the mile to base, and then I would work in this skiff, which was 24 hours, but the Marines and the sailors, and it's a whole joint service international thing. So everybody that works there is stationed there. They're not deployed. They're stationed there. So they work Monday through Friday, 7 to 4, just like every other duty station hours. So I'm working from, you know, 10 p.m. to, I was supposed to get off at like 8 a.m., but I really stayed there till like 2 or 3 in the afternoon every day. I was working like fucking 18-hour shifts. So, yeah, I mean, I would go and I would sit in this skiff in the middle of the night, completely empty, alone, you know, and then people would come in and it'd be time for me to leave. And so I'd peace out and go back to my apartment away from everybody else and sit in my apartment alone, and then wake up and go to work alone. And yeah, it's very isolating.
Yeah, super bad.
Yeah. I mean, I still wouldn't have wanted to be on the ship. Ship was still worse. I'm not saying I had it bad. I'm just saying at least you guys had shared misery. At least you had people to be around.
Yeah.
But yeah, that element of like loneliness and lack of camaraderie and stuff is it was isolating.
Almost worse, in my opinion. Like, I like people, and if I would have gone absolutely bonkers in that position. Like, yeah, we were on the ship, you know, shitting our brains out because there was JP8 in our water, and, you know, everybody was getting, you know, VGI all the time, and, you know, the toilets didn't flush and the AC didn't work. But like, you know, it was almost like when you were trying to scour the ship to find a toilet that wasn't already brimming with like multiple people's raw sewage. It was like, all right, guys, let's go on an adventure. Like, let's go down to law enforcement, you know, MP battalion, like LE battalions, barracks, and see if, and, you know, poke your head through the door. Hey, is your shitter full? Yeah. All right, let's go to LAR. Hey, is your shitter full? No, come here. Oh my God, thank you.
Oh my God. Yeah. The short amount of time that I was on the ship, like during like you know, workup exercises, and then from Pendleton to Hawaii, and I was on the ship during certain times. I heard that the MPs kept the dogs down in like where all the quad cons were. Oh. And well, they like in kennels. They had to have they couldn't let the dog wander the ship.
They should have. That would have been awesome.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So I heard dog of all time. Can you imagine just like the amount of pets that dog would receive, just like walking through the mess decks? Like everyone like, oh my God, that's a fucking dog. Scritch, scritch, scritch.
It would lose all discipline.
Oh yeah.
Like it would just go back to being a lab. You know what I mean? Like it would be hopeless.
And it would get so fat from people giving it jerky and stuff like that.
God. Yeah. People giving all the shit that they served in the mess hall. Yeah. So and I heard that they kept them down in the lower decks in kennels, and then they took them out, you know, a couple times a day to like exercise them and work them and play with them and stuff like that. So anytime I had a free moment, I was down in the lower decks, just like fucking snaking through everything. Like, where are these kennels? Where are these kennels? Like doing everything I could to find the kennels or to catch them with the dogs out, you know?
Right.
Never found them. And I was so pissed.
I feel like they wouldn't do that. I feel like they would fly the dogs over with like a handler or two. Right? I mean, where would the dog take a shit?
I mean, I don't know. Maybe they had like a puppy pad and then they would just, you know, throw away the puppy pad.
Because we lived with we lived adjacent to the LE guys, and I don't know if any of them were canine handlers.
Listen, I'm not saying it's factually accurate. I'm saying this is what somebody told me.
Yeah. And it spurred the doggy scavenger hunt.
Dog.
I would have done the exact same thing. Like, you mean to tell me there's a fucking dog on this ship? You're not going to see me until I find that kennel.
We are in a contained device floating in the middle of the ocean, and you're telling me there is a dog somewhere. Yeah. I will find it.
Yeah. And I will not rest until I do. I will befriend that puppy.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I totally get you.
Yeah. So I tried, but that's about the extent of my ship adventures. Other than getting horribly seasick. That's another reason. So they debated sending us to Bahrain. They debated sending us to Hawaii. They debated sending us to Bahrain. They, like, well, just because all 37 Mews before us have done it doesn't mean that we have to do it. This is a status quo that should stay in place. Like, let's just go ahead and do what's working. Right. But there was some debate. And then if we do send people, who do we send? Blah, blah, blah. And when we started doing the ship exercises, we all found out, including me, that I have horrible motion sickness. I get really seasick. So being on the ship, I would be down for about the first 3 days because I would try and take Dramamine and I would throw it up. And so I just had to keep taking Dramamine until it slowly got enough in my system that I would stop throwing it up. And that usually took about 3 days before I could actually get into the cess and start working.
Wow. One thing that I've learned since the deployment is one thing that you can do about seasickness is put one earplug in, but leave one open.
Really?
Yeah. Like an earplug or like a motion or like a noise canceling headphone, because the motion sickness comes from like the disconnect between the fluid in your ears that does your equilibrium and then your ability to see the horizon. Okay. And there's a conflict in your brain where it can't rectify why your equilibrium is telling you that you're going like this, but your vision is telling you that you're stationary. Okay. And so if you do that, it just kind of helps balance your equilibrium out a little bit, because there's not also sound going in both ears, like agitating the fluid more. Yeah. So I haven't had, I never really had a problem with seasickness, so I can't say personally that it works, but I've seen that like multiple places since. So if you ever go on like a ocean fishing trip or something, maybe check it out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's worth it. I'll give it a try. So I'm headed back to Pendleton after I finish up here. And I was talking to, oh, you didn't know that?
No, I'm so excited.
I'm sorry. Yeah. So I'm headed back to Pendleton.
Oh my God. This is huge.
I was talking to the OPSO out there, and he was like, yeah, we've got a MagTaf and a Mew going out. We can get you on one of those. And I was like, yeah, let's do MagTaf. I'll take MagTaf. MagTaf will be good. Yeah. Please don't ever put me on a boat again.
Don't put me on a ship, please.
Don't put me on a boat.
Dude, that's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped. But yeah, and the other thing, like when we were flying back from Bahrain, we were on KLM, which if you ever have the option of choosing KLM as your airline, do it. It's phenomenal. It's like a Dutch or German airline or whatever, and it's an international partner with Delta. So if you're flying internationally and you book it with Delta, you might get on a KLM flight. And
it was dope.
It's amazing. It's amazing. American Airlines have nothing on European airlines. Like the customer service, they served so many snacks that I was actually declining them. Like they serve snacks like every 45 minutes.
Whoa.
They come by and they're like, would you like snacks? And it's a whole array. Like, what would you like? Like, can I have 4 Stroop waffles? And they're like, yes, absolutely. Would you like something to drink with that? I mean, they are, yeah, it's mind blowing. But anyway, so they, and then all the stewardesses were like fudging, like Dutch Barbies, right? So,
so they're 7 feet tall. Yeah.
oh my God. Yeah. Like I'm as straight as they come, but I don't know. They might make me question. So I'm sitting in my seat, and it's a massive airliner. So it's one of those airplanes where there's a stall of bathrooms like standalone in the center, right? There's like first class, and then the front half of the airplane, and then a bathroom, and then the back half of the airplane, and then another bathroom, right? Massive. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like 3 rows away from this center of the airplane bathroom. The stewardess is sitting in a little jump seat facing me. We take off, the motion sickness hits me, right? So we're still in the ascent, and I'm like, oh no, oh no, I'm not gonna make it. I unbuckle my seat and I book it to the bathroom to try and throw up. Like I'm trying to do everyone a favor and throw up in the bathroom,
right?
And not over my seat or in the aisle, right? This stewardess must have had practice, because as soon as she saw me unbuckling my seatbelt, she had hers undone. By the time I was in the aisle, she had clotheslined me into an empty seat, and with her free hand grabbed a air sickness bag and put it in front of my face.
Wow.
McMap has nothing on KLM stewardesses. This woman, before I knew what was happening, this woman had me back down into a seat, air sickness bag in front of me, and was buckling me in.
Wow.
And I was like, thank you.
That was the most violent yet best customer service I have ever received.
I know. And then she looks at me as I'm throwing up into this bag, and she's like, the pilot hasn't turned off the seatbelt sign yet. You have to stay seated.
And you're like, oh my God, woman. Like, meanwhile, on American flights, they're like, don't make a mess in there. Or just try not to, whatever.
American Airlines, they're pulling an emergency landing to have the cops pick you up because you dared to stand up when the seatbelt light was on.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a riot in, coach because somebody tried to stand up. Oh, fucking United Fight Club.
Oh, yeah, that was ugly.
Oh man. Yeah. So that's, anyway, needless to say, I just don't ever want to go on a boat again.
I feel you there.
Yeah.
Okay. So you do the float, you come back, how long after that did you get histed?
I did not get histed. I volunteered.
Oh, okay.
I volunteered for recruiting duty. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So real quick for everybody who doesn't know wow. Yeah. For people who don't understand, can you explain the HIST system? Because I was a lowly corporal and never had to worry about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So once you hit sergeant, you are eligible for HIST. I don't know what it stands for, but it's HSST. It's the HIST list. And basically what it is, there's B billets, and there's 3 B billets for enlisted. You can do drill instructor, recruiter, or MCT combat instructor. And what that is basically for 3 years, you give back to the Marine Corps. You step outside of your MOS, you go do something that helps the Marine Corps bring in the next generation of Marines and train them up. So if you volunteer, you can put your list of preferences. You can volunteer for one in particular. But if you don't volunteer for one, you get HISted. And basically what that means is that the Marine Corps chooses you and says, you will go to this duty. It's like a draft. Yeah. So they tell you what duty you're going to go to, when you're going to go there, and you don't really have a choice in it. Now, you could be one of those rare people that swaps with somebody. So like, let's say I got drill instructor and you got recruiter, and you wanted to be a drill instructor and I wanted to be a recruiter. You and I could talk to the monitor about swapping our orders, but that's really rare. So people don't, it doesn't happen very often. But basically, if you get HISted, you do what the Marine Corps tells you to do. If you volunteer, you have more control about what you do and when you do it. So for me, the reason I volunteered was because Scott got accepted to MESEP and was coming out to Boulder, Colorado for college. And he had 3 years of school left to finish before he got his degree. So that lines up pretty perfectly with a 3-year B-billet. Now, I chose recruiting because it's the only thing that could get me to Colorado. There is no recruit depot, so I can't be a drill instructor in Colorado. So I choose recruiting because it would get me to Colorado. And then the other thing was because I genuinely love the Marine Corps. It changed my life in a really big way. And spoiler alert, I divorced the ex-husband while I was at DLI. So
yeah.
And then, so it changed my life in a really, really big way. And I wanted to be able to do that for other people. So I chose recruiting for selfish and unselfish reasons.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you got out there, Scott's going to Boulder. So what is recruiting school like? Because not everybody, can just like, if you sat me down and you were like, get me into the Marine Corps, I'd be like, hi kids, do you like violence? Like, like
that's actually how it starts.
yeah.
Lesson 1.
Yeah, it's like exactly. It's like that scene in Wolf of Wall Street where he's like, sell me this pen.
Yeah.
But so what is recruiting school like?
So at recruiting school, and I don't want to hate on recruiting school because they have a system that works, but it is very much geared towards the lowest common denominator. So it is meant to take somebody who has no sales experience, no sales skills, doesn't understand how to relate to people on a socially acceptable way, I guess. Like, because people can have conversations, right? There are plenty of people that can sit down, have a smoke, have a beer, and talk to people. But then when you put them in a setting where they need to speak professionally and knowledgeably and not from like personal opinion and that kind of stuff, they struggle with that. So what recruiter school does is it teaches you how to sell the Marine Corps. I don't like that term because okay, this gets I don't think you can sell the Marine Corps. If somebody came to me and tried to sell me a Ferrari, I'm not buying it. I don't care how good your pitch is. I don't care how good of a deal it is. I don't care that it's my favorite color. I'm not buying a Ferrari. I don't want a Ferrari. I'm not in the market for a Ferrari. It has nothing to do with my goals and aspirations and the way I want to live my life. Mm-hmm. I don't care how good of a salesman you are. You're not going to be able to sell me a Ferrari. So I don't believe you can sell the Marine Corps to anybody that doesn't want it, at least a little bit, Yeah. So it teaches you how to present the Marine Corps in a way that helps people see how it aligns with their goals and aspirations and what they want out of life, right? Whether that's financial, like when I first came in, whether that is belonging and brotherhood, like I eventually found that I didn't realize I wanted, right? Whatever reason it is, it teaches you how to identify what people want out of life and show them how the Marine Corps aligns with that. And if it doesn't align with it, peace out. This isn't a good fit. There's no reason for me to make you a Marine because you're just going to be a shitty Marine and I don't want to work with you.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that's what recruiter school is.
Okay. So you get through recruiting school and, you kind of brush up on I'd imagine you kind of brush up on like what are the most, again, not sellable, but the most outwardly attractive traits of the Marine Corps to people that haven't experienced it. Because obviously not every person that you're trying to recruit has done exhaustive research like you did. Not everybody is going to sit down with a notebook full of questions and not grill the recruiter, but really pry all of the meaningful information out. A lot of people like me are going to be like, so I want to get out of my hometown. The GI Bill sounds cool. I don't know if I want to be a grunt. What do I do? And so that's how you kind of, you need to fill in those gaps. So you do that. You get out to Colorado. Is there, I know that there's got to be some kind of hierarchy within a recruiting station, but
yes,
nobody really knows, like everybody's heard of the, recruiters trying to meet their quotas and, trying to look good or whatever. But how does the hierarchy of a recruiting substation play out? Like, what were your like when you first arrived in Colorado, what was your day-to-day like? Was it like a lot of cold calling, a lot of going to high schools and malls and stuff like that, or what was that like?
Yeah, so when I first showed up, I started on the enlisted side. I started in an enlisted office, which is what most everybody is familiar with. I work in an officer selection office now, which is completely different. But when I first started, it was on the enlisted side. And there is, each office is assigned what's called a sector, or basically an area of land. So I had a sector where it was like, okay, I'm responsible for this area on the map. Like I could literally draw a line on a map that covered my area. And that was where I was responsible for covering.
Yeah, it's a jurisdiction, basically.
Yes. Yeah. So anybody that lived in that area, that went to school in a school in that area, that was my responsibility to cover that, to talk to everybody in that area. And so depending on how big of an area your office covers, it determines how many recruiters are in that area. So you'll see some offices that literally have one recruiter in it. Like it's one Marine. And they're like, yep, it's me.
Nice.
And I worked in a big office. I worked in an office with 5. There was 5 of us in the office. It was a huge area. And so it's 5 Marines and one, we call him a boss, but it's basically like a staff NCOIC. But when you're talking to civilians, there's a lot of recruiting terms that are not Marine Corps terms because civilians don't understand them.
Right.
So if I say, oh, that's my staff NCOIC, a civilian is like, the fuck?
Yeah, that's a lot of letters.
Yeah, exactly. So we call him a boss just because that's what civilians understand. So when you say, hey, I'm going to introduce you to my boss, they understand that. So it was 5 Marines and a boss. And we covered a pretty big area of North Denver. And I was there for 9 months in that office before I switched over to the OST. Day to day, it was a ton of cold calls, ton of phone calls. I'm talking 80 plus, sometimes 100 plus cold calls a day. And then you go out into town in person. So you go to Walmart, you go to Target, you go to Best Buy, you go to the park, you go to gas stations, you go anywhere where there's people and you just strike up conversations with people. Hey, how you doing? You ever thought about the Marine Corps, right? If they look to be within Marine Corps age, decent fitness, decent, they look like somebody that could potentially be a Marine. Someday, you go, you pick up a conversation with them, you start talking to them. Have you ever thought about the Marine Corps? Sometimes they tell you to fuck off. Sometimes they're like, no, never thought about it. I didn't think that I could, well, why not? Why don't you think you can? Well, I'm too old. How old are you? I'm 24. Cool. I was 25 when I joined. Now that you're not too old, what do you think about the Marine Corps? oh, well, I had always thought about it, right? So you strike up a conversation with people in that way. And then you use social media a lot. That's becoming more and more prevalent, especially with COVID. It's becoming huge. But you reach out to people on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, that kind of stuff. And then you have your poolies who can bring you referrals. So, hey, I have this friend I go to school with. I think that they would be good in this program as well. I just don't know how to talk to them about the Marine Corps. Okay, give me their phone number, bring them into the office, bring them to PT, I'll talk to them.
That makes sense.
So that's your day, is doing all of those. And then if anybody says, yeah, I want to learn more about the Marine Corps, you set up an appointment with them. And then that's when you start digging into what are your goals, your aspirations, what do you want to do in life? Let's see if the Marine Corps can help you get there.
Okay.
So you do all that every day. And you work. When I was on the enlisted side, I was working 100 hours a week, easily. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I went into work at 7:30 every morning, and then I didn't get home until usually 11:30 midnight every day. And then sometimes I would have to take kids to MEPS. So MEPS opens at 6 a.m. They have to be there like at 6 a.m. to walk in the door. And the kids aren't allowed to drive themselves anywhere. So I would have to go pick them up from their house, or I would have to meet them at the recruiting office and then drive them to MEPS from there. So sometimes I was having to get up at, 3:30 in the morning to go get a kid to take them to get them to MEPS like by 6, because we had a huge area that we covered. So
right.
A lot of driving time.
How big is the MEPS in the Denver area?
It's bigger than the one I went through in Raleigh. I know that. It's not nearly as big as some that I've seen, though.
Yeah, the MEPS in Sacramento was enormous.
Oh, yeah, no. This, I'm trying to think of what I could compare it to. I don't know. It's just a U-shaped building. It's one story of a U-shaped government building. Like the MEPS is on the second floor. There's a bankruptcy court on the first floor. There's
fun.
Yeah, it's just a government building.
Yeah, makes sense.
So, yeah.
So you do that for 9 months, and then you went over to the officer selection one. Which did you prefer? Like, which do you like more? Obviously, barring the the work tempo and stuff like that, but which is more enjoyable? If
officer side.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Yeah, the officer side. Because of the way that it's done. So the process is completely different. So if you remember when you talked to the recruiter, you said, yeah, let's do this. And then probably 3 days later you were at MEPS?
It's something like that. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. 3 days, maybe a week.
Yeah, swearing in at least. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you go to MEPS, you do your exam, you take your ASVAB, you raise your right hand, you swear in, you're in the DEP, you have a boot camp date.
Right. I don't think I had a boot camp date, but because I swore in and I was on an Intel open contract, and then because I took the ASVAB, I went in, took the ASVAB, swore in, got my B-hole looked at, weird day. And then I had to go back to do the D-Lab a different time.
Yeah.
And then, so I don't think I had a boot camp date until after that. I don't remember.
Yeah, and that happens sometimes.
Holy shit.
Yeah. That happens sometimes where even after you swear in, you can change your job and you can change your boot camp date.
Yeah, my boot camp date got moved up a lot.
Yeah, mine did too. So that stuff is flexible, but for the most part, like when you go to MEPS, you raise your right hand, there you go. Like you're going to boot camp, right?
Right.
You have to pass an IST and that's it. Like you can run 1.5 miles in less than 13 minutes. Good job. You're going to boot camp, and off you go. And the reason for that is because boot camp is designed to create a basically trained Marine. It is designed that you show up knowing nothing, and they will create a Marine. And if you aren't getting it, they're going to roll you back. If you get injured, they're going to roll you back. If you're out of shape, they're going to roll you back, and they are going to keep rolling you until you graduate. It is very, very hard to get sent home from boot camp. It does happen, like kids, they punch another recruit or they break a leg so bad that they can't recover, whatever. It happens. But for the most part, they're going to make a Marine out of you no matter what. So they don't really care how you show up.
Right.
On the officer side, you have to apply to a selection board. You have to be selected to go to OCS, which means you have to be competitive. You have to bring something to the table to go to OCS. So when somebody comes into my office and says, yes, I want to be a Marine officer, let's do this, they're not raising their right hand for sometimes up to a year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I work with them for however long is required to get them to the point where they are competitive to be selected and capable of passing OCS.
So what generally do you look for that would make what are the things that would make somebody competitive? Because in boot camp, enlisted side, it's like, if you can do 20 pull-ups, you'll be the guide, you'll have a good time. Easy day.
Yeah.
Like if you can, it's pretty much all about because you can fudge the paperwork, you can say you didn't smoke pot, you can work the system a little bit, and like you said, it's hard to leave the depot not a Marine. A lot harder than it is to graduate. And that's actually something that if anybody listening is not a Marine and maybe wants to be, is I had a lot of anxiety on the way to boot camp because I was looking at it like a tryout, honestly, where there was a significant chance that you could fail. And that's not really the case as I found. But for officer candidacy, clearly, you do need that something else. You have to be, it is a tryout, really. So
very much so. They will send you home.
So what is it that makes you competitive other than, being in really good shape? Like, what do they look for?
Yeah. So when you go on the selection board, they're going to look first and foremost at your PFT score. So that's a big difference. You don't run an IST. You have to run a full PFT.
Okay. And an IST is 1.5 miles pull-ups, crunches. PFT is 3 miles pull-ups, crunches.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. They're not really going to consider you if you're not at least at a 250 PFT.
Wow. Okay.
That's like bare minimum. They're like, okay, fine, we'll look, right? They're more willing to look at your package if you're at least like 270 or higher. And then if you're 280, 85 or higher, they're like, okay, yeah, let's put this up to the front of the pile, right?
Wow.
So
still physicality is definitely very important.
Yes. Yeah, it's huge. Because they're not looking to get you in shape. Yeah. They're not going to build you up physically. You need to come to OCS in shape. And then once they look at PFT, then they're going to look at your GPA in college. So they're going to look at what school did you go to, what was your major, how many credits did you take at per semester, and what was your GPA. So if you're rocking, if you've got a 3.5 and you're going to, George Washington University and you're majoring in economics, that's huge, right? Whereas if you're going to Montana Public University and you're majoring in basket weaving and you've got a 2.4, they're like, okay, let's talk about the academic load of OCS, right? Because OCS is really academics heavy. So they want to,
that's true.
They want to know you can keep up academically. So there's that. And then they look at leadership experience and stuff. So they want to see are you president of a fraternity? Did you start a campus organization? Are you a manager at work? Are you a Boy Scout? Stuff like that. They want to see somebody who is involved in their community, in their school, somebody who steps up and takes initiative and has held a position of trust. And then from there, you have the rest of your application, which includes like letters of recommendation. So you have to get letters of recommendation for the selection board. You have to have 5 letters of recommendation.
Wow.
Yeah, from like employers, people from your college, like professors and deans and stuff like that. Any former military members, yeah.
Wow. I mean, that does make a lot of sense, especially on the academic side, because that's something that like you have, in enlisted boot camp, you have academics, and it's mostly,
where the drill instructors give you the answers.
Right. It's not just that, but it's also like, what are you studying? It's like history of the Marine Corps in a very indoctrination heavy manner, which serves a purpose. It's not it's not a bad thing. I don't mean it as a bad thing, rather, but like the battles that the Marine Corps fought, and the history behind the hymn and stuff like that. So, but at officer candidacy school, because at OCS, it's probably like, what's the split academically between OCS and TBS? Because TBS is probably like strategy and tactics versus OCS is like leadership skills and like management, or
yeah. So at OCS, they're looking at somebody's ability to lead under pressure. So that's what they're considering when they're evaluating you is, academics, they're looking at, like intellectually your ability to keep up, but also your ability to time manage and prioritize. Are you going to sleep or are you going to study? What's more important, right? Because you at boot camp, you take a test like at the end, right? Maybe one in the middle. I mean, you basically take like 1 or 2 tests.
And it's hardly a test.
Right. At OCS, you're taking a test almost every week.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So you're gonna learn a couple chapters of the Green Monster, right? You're gonna learn Cooper's Color Code and the birth of the Marine Corps and the Marine Corps ethics, and then you're gonna take a test over that. And then you're gonna learn the 5-paragraph order and land navigation, and then you're gonna take a test over that. And so you're taking a test every week while all of this information is just being shoved down your throat. So they're looking at, how do you manage your time? Are you going to, read letters from home and write letters home, or are you going to study? Are you going to prep your uniform, or are you going to sleep? They're looking to see how you manage your time. So that's what they're evaluating with that. And so it's a lot more evaluation, whereas at TBS, they're saying, okay, we know you have what it takes, at least according to OCS. Like, you've proven you have some sort of leadership capability. So now let's teach you how to lead as a Marine officer. So TBS is a lot more focused on tactics and strategy and combat and warfare and planning missions and that kind of stuff. Whereas OCS is more about, can you grasp what we're teaching you? Can you still lead in an effective manner, or does the stress get to you?
Got it. That's in depth. That's a lot. I mean, it makes sense. It's interesting though. I'd be interested to find out, like, if you're still sleeping a lot, but you're still acing your tests and you have a good uniform, like, will they fuck with you, or like, is it just the ends justify the means?
No, yeah. So that's where I come in. And that's why I love this job so much, is because I don't put somebody on the selection board until I know they're ready to be successful at OCS. I'm not going to put somebody up to fail.
Right.
So if I look at somebody and I'm like, ain't no way you'd make it through OCS right now, you're not going on the selection board. I'm not risking the selection board giving you a yes and then you shipping out to OCS and fucking failing miserably.
Yeah, no, that's smart.
So that's why I love this side of the job, is like, that person's not raising their right hand and committing to, and that's the other thing, is they commit to OCS. They don't commit to the Marine Corps. On the enlisted side, when you raise your right hand, you commit to the Marine Corps. On the officer side, you don't commit to the Marine Corps until you finish OCS and they offer you a commission. So you can make it all the way through 10 weeks of OCS and graduate, and the staff at OCS says, no, sorry, we're not offering you a commission.
Really?
They can deny you a commission. Yeah. If they're like, listen, I know you graduated, but you just don't, like, you barely made it. You don't have what it takes to be a Marine officer. They won't offer you a commission.
Dang.
Yeah. So
How often
when
does
you,
that happen? What's the
not very
percentage?
often.
Oh, well, I mean, that's good. But what's the
Yes.
percentage, do you think, the percentage of failure?
Like they make it all the way through the 10 weeks and then,
No, just
or are
like
you talking about in general from start to finish?
start to finish, yeah.
Start to finish, OCS has, it's like a 65% pass rate.
Wow, that's so much lower than I thought.
Yeah. So like 35-40% of people don't make it. And it fluctuates. So that's like the OCS average. It fluctuates. There's different statistics by class. So there's typically lower graduation rates in the winter versus the summer. Fall typically has because of the weather.
Oh.
Yeah. So if there's people who, there's people who go in the summer and they get heat stroke or some type of heat injury. There's people that go in the winter and they get cold injury. They get like frostbite and hypothermia and stuff like that. Because you have to go through the Quigley no matter what. Do you know what the Quigley is?
No idea.
No? Okay. So the Quigley is, it's part of like the E-course. So as you're like going through the trails of Quantico, and it is basically like a man-made pond / river, like a long, narrow pond, basically. And it's got obstacles in it, like logs and barbed wire and tubes and stuff that you have to go through. And you have to fully submerge yourself in water. They don't care if it's winter. They will break the ice for you to get into the Quigley.
Damn.
Yeah. So just the like injury levels and stuff, and then people's tolerance. People generally tolerate heat better than they tolerate cold. So a lot of people, they're there in the cold. And the thing that people don't know about OCS is you can leave OCS, you can quit, you can drop, you can go home. You just, put your paw in the air and you're like, yep, I would like to go home. And they say, cool, travel is that way. Go get yourself a plane ticket. And so for a lot of people, they're there in the cold and they don't like it and they're miserable and they quit because it's cold. And then also just things being covered in ice. People slip, there's a lot more injury rates. And if you get injured, you go home. They don't rehab, they don't roll you, you go home. It doesn't matter if it's a broken femur, a concussion, a twisted ankle, you get injured, you're going home.
And there's no we're like, sorry, this happened to you, come back another time, like try again next time. It's just like, peace.
They say that you're recommended to reapply is what it's called. And generally, if your injury is not like permanent, you didn't like cut a finger off or something, yeah. They recommend you to reapply, but you have to reapply. You have to get selected again. You have to go to OCS again.
Oh.
You have to start all over.
Damn, that's intense.
Yeah. So I like this side of it a lot better because the commitment level is higher on the front end. I get to help people prepare for OCS and I get to see those improvements. Whereas on the enlisted side, the reason that so many people, if you ask a Marine, who do you remember more, your drill instructors or your recruiter? The drill instructors. Everybody, I respect the hell out of my drill instructor. My recruiter fucking lied to me, but my drill instructor, they changed my life, right? Oh yeah, you're right. Not the person that got you into the Marine Corps definitely didn't change your life. The person that beat the shit out of you for 13 weeks, life-changing, right? It's because the transformation happened at boot camp. Whereas on this side, I get to be there for that transformation process and I get to help them through it. And there's still a transformation that happens at OCS. There is still an intensity that I cannot replicate. There is still an element of like, they're called sergeant instructors at OCS, not drill instructors. There's still an element where that sergeant instructor is going to have an impact on them and going to change their life at some level. But the kids that I enlisted on the enlisted side, most of them don't talk to me anymore. I've lost touch with almost all of them. Now, if they got back in touch with me, I would be more than happy to talk to them. It's not a bad, there was no bad blood. There just wasn't that bond created, right? They said, thanks, peace out, I'm going to go do this thing. Whereas the kids that I work with now on the officer side, I'm still in touch with almost every single one of them. I still talk to them on an almost daily basis. I know their families, I know their girlfriends, their boyfriends, their parents, their siblings. They come back to Denver to visit family. They come and see me, and they come to our office and they hang out. That connection and that bond is there because we went through something together.
Right. And it's less of, because you put in that time commitment, and it seems like the sample size is probably much smaller. Whereas, an enlisted recruiter is probably juggling X number of poolies at any given time. Whereas you're like, okay, I have my 2 homies or however many that God, I wish. Is it usually just one at a time?
It's, yeah. So here's the thing is that on the enlisted side, the turnover is way faster because kids are leaving every week. Every week you're sending 3, 4, 5, 6 kids to boot camp. Right. Now you have 5 recruiters managing a pool of maybe 30, 40 kids, and you're shipping out 4, 5, 6 of those every week. On my office, it's me managing 85 candidates, and I send out 20 a year.
Okay. God.
Now I know the math doesn't really work.
No, it does. It's especially given that you started with saying, it often takes a year to get somebody from in your office to OCS. It's just you handling that many, it being that involved with that many people. Wow. Yeah.
So I have an officer. I have an officer selection officer, but we have different jobs. So the officer selection officer is responsible for kind of the legal hire side of things. They're responsible for making sure that the contracts are valid, that people meet the standards and meet the requirements. Like their signature is what's on everything. So they're responsible for making sure that everything is done to the letter of the law. I'm responsible for getting them from hi, how you doing, all the way up to please raise your right hand. So all the paperwork, the PT, the working out, the mentoring, the teaching, that's all me.
Damn. That sounds like a tremendous amount of work.
That's why I work 80 hours a week now. So it's I still work less than I did on the enlisted side, but yeah, I'm working 7 days a week. I'm usually working 12, 13 hours a day.
Jesus.
Yeah.
But, I'm sure that is a lot more fulfilling, especially because you have that relationship. Whereas, as you mentioned, so many enlisted people, their image of their recruiter looking back is a lot of times unfavorable. Why do you think that is? Having been in, because this is whenever somebody talks about a recruiter, it can go one of a couple ways. For me, it was nice enough guy. I mean, he didn't screw me or anything. I didn't get screwed over, thankfully. He did his job. But you're right. I don't talk to him. But you do hear a lot my recruiter fucked me. I was lied to. Blah blah blah. But it's why is there? Dare I say, is there a culture or a certain aspect of disingenuity to recruiting? Because, like you said earlier, it's sales. Sort of it's got aspects of sales, and when you think of you working on the officer side, you're selling the Lexuses and the Acuras and the Ferraris, which, it requires a certain type of individual to walk into that dealership in the first place, metaphorically. Whereas, if you're the shiesty used car salesman on Coast Highway and Oceanside, that might be more analogous to the enlisted side, given the testimony that you hear so often. Like, why do you think that is?
Yeah. So there's a lot of different reasons, but one of the most common things that I see, personally, and then with other people's story, and if anybody is a veteran and they want me to look up their recruitment papers, I will look it up for you. I will tell you what your recruiter put in there.
I will definitely put that under the social media for this episode, because I'm sure that would be interesting. I have my whole SRB, so I could flip through and try to decipher all the legalese, but I don't know if anybody still has theirs.
Yeah. If anybody wants me to look that up, I will. So a lot of times it is the recruiter's hands are tied. So we do have, you can call it quotas, and that is a part of it. Because we are shipping out 4, 5, 6 people a week, we need to replenish those numbers, because next week I'm going to have to ship out another 4, 5, 6 and another 4, 5, 6 and another 4, 5. Like, I have to keep that cycle going. So there is an element of turnover where the recruiter is like, you want to be a Marine? Great, sign here. Now I have to go find somebody else who also wants to be a Marine, because I have to replenish those numbers, right? But the other part of it, and what people don't realize, is that the recruiter is also limited. The recruiter only has a certain number of allocations that they are allowed to fill. So when you think about, like, when people used to go into the recruiter's office and they're like, yeah, I went in, I signed the paper, and a week later I went to boot camp. That's not how it is anymore, because we're not doing the plus up that we had in 2002, 2003. It's now where you go in, you sign on the dotted line, you're not going anywhere for like 7, 8 months, because there are no spaces open in boot camp. Boot camp is first come, first serve. There's only so many bunks at boot camp. And for women, it's the entire country is filling up those beds. And for men, it's half the country, East or West Coast, filling up those beds. So when you think about it, it's not just you. There's a whole half of the nation that's trying to go to boot camp, and there's only so many beds there. So the recruiter is only allowed to bring in so many people.
And I'm sure also that has to do with because I think, a lot of people, like, what was the worst thing that could happen to somebody at boot camp was when they, like, one of the worst things that we saw, or one of the worst things that another recruit could tell you is like, yeah, I'm open contract. And they would say it with pride almost. And I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind? Because for those of you, again, who don't know, open contract basically means that you are allocated a spot in boot camp, and you take it and you go to boot camp. And upon graduation, at least this is how I imagine it to be. I've never had a recruiter explain it, so maybe you can if I get it wrong. But you would go to boot camp, do it, and then while you're getting your first orders to your duty station, it's your MOS designation would be given to you based on the needs of the Marine Corps, kind of like how a duty station would be. And so a lot of those allocations were given to the MOSs that people genuinely didn't voluntarily sign up for. So bulk fuel, cook, admin, things like that. And so, when we were sitting down at senior drill instructor school circle time, after coming back from the Crucible or whatever, and he was going through and, our senior was going through and rattling off everybody's MOSs and where we would be going for MOS school. First of all, my senior drill instructor could not pronounce the word cryptologic for his life when he was reading off mine. He's like, what the hell even is that? And I was like, this recruit, or, I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, a lot of the guys that I was talking to that were open contract, their contracts got filled with unfavorable MOSs. Not that they're bad, but they're not the most sought after. And so because there are only so many allocations to, it's not just boot camp, but then the follow-on MOS schools and then the slots for those MOSs in the Marine Corps, you know, you're churning out 5-6 people per week, but you can only send so many people over the course of a calendar year or whatever or a quarter to infantry. And you can only send so many of those 5-6 to intel or to logistics or supply or whatever. And so how is that, like, why that happens is because people don't want to sign up for bulk fuel or, you know, field radio operator.
Yeah, so we get job allocations October 1st every year, right? New fiscal year, here come the job allocations. Here's what the Marine Corps needs for the next year. And if for the year we need 50 linguists, right? That's for the whole country. If the Marine Corps as a whole needs 50 linguists for the year, the whole country has to divide that up. So if I come into the recruiting office and it's August and I say, I want to be a linguist, and they say, well, I'm sorry, there's no linguist jobs available, I can either walk out and say, well, then fuck this, I'm not going to be a Marine. Or I can wait for October 1st and see if options open up, see if there's more linguist spaces that drop, or I can choose a different job. And if I say, okay, I'm going to wait until October 1st, the recruiter doesn't want to sit there for 2 months and just wait to see if that job opens up, right? They're trying to get their 5-6 a month because they have a job to do. And so they're gonna do their best to try and talk to me about, like, you know, do you have any other interests, or you know, you don't even know if you qualify for linguist. I might not be able to give you this job at all. So how about you go down to MEPS, you take your tests, then we'll see what you qualify for, and then we'll see if linguist is a real conversation. Got it. So it's a part mix of, like, you know, when do you go into the recruiter's office? What time of the year? That's going to determine what jobs are still available for the recruiter to even have an option to give you. I don't give a shit how bad you want to be infantry. If there's no infantry spots, the Marine Corps has told me I cannot put anybody else in infantry. It doesn't matter that that's been your lifelong dream since you were 7 years old to be a door kicker. There's nothing I can do about it. And so a lot of times people look at that and they're like, oh, the Marine Corps screwed me over. I wanted to be infantry and they put me in admin. It's like, well, that's what was available at the time, you know? And the recruiter can talk to you and say, listen, you know, you can either sit around for 6 months and wait for the new fiscal year jobs to open up to have infantry, or I can send you to boot camp next month as admin. Which would you prefer, you know? And for a lot of people, they want to go to boot camp as soon as possible. They want to start that process. And so they, you know, a lot of times it depends on how the recruiter presents it. You know, and that just comes down to personality. So if that's the situation, I can sit down in front of somebody and I can say, listen, man, you don't really want to be infantry, all right? They shit in bags, they live in the woods, they, you know, they're always carrying 100-pound packs on their back. Like, trust me, you know, you said that college was something that was important to you. You want to use the GI Bill and the TA and that kind of stuff. Look at admin. If you go admin, you're going to have all the time you need to complete your degree and accomplish that goal that you have for yourself. What do you think about going admin? Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. I can leave next month. I can complete my college degree on active duty. This is what I want. And then they get to the fleet, they get to MCT, and they start spouting off about how they really wanted to be infantry, but their recruiter fucked them. Whereas another recruiter might say, hey man, I know you want to be infantry, but listen, there's no more infantry spots available. You can wait 6 months for another job to open up, or you can go now on another job. which do you want to do? I want to go now. Okay, that choice is yours, right? It's just, and that person might just have a better sense of like, hey, I made this decision. I'm the one that decided I didn't want to wait 6 months. And I went into admin because I wanted to leave sooner. And so that's, a lot of times it's like, oh, my recruiter lied to me. Sometimes it's just how they presented the options that they had. Their hands were tied, and it's just how they presented it to the individual. And then other times it's like, I want to be Intel. Listen, stud, let me tell you what a 32 on the ASVAB means.
Yeah, but let me speak real slow so that you can understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, I know that's what you want to do, but that ain't gonna happen for you. And we're people too. I don't like to sit in front of somebody and tell them they're dumb as shit. Like,
oh, I'm just a bad test taker.
Oh. You think so?
Let me tell you, when I went to take my ASVAB, like, because I did the practice one, like in the recruiting station.
Yeah.
And I did, pretty well on it.
Uh-huh.
And so my recruiter was like, holy shit, like we need to get this guy to ASVAB like right now, especially because I walked into the office. They didn't have to like grab
right.
Me. I walked in, I got a 99 on the practice ASVAB, and they were like, and I was like, cool, I want to be Intel. They're like, we'll do whatever the fuck you want. And I was like, yeah. Okay, cool. So when I went to go take the actual ASVAB at MEPS, my recruiter had another another prospective applicant. Applicant. Mm-hmm. And it was her third try taking the ASVAB.
Mm-hmm.
She was super sweet. Yeah. I don't know where in the area she was from, but she was really, really nice. And so we're in the car on the way over there. It was like a 35-minute drive or whatever. And she was like studying. She had like ASVAB study material and stuff.
Yeah.
She got a 7.
Yeah. Not
a 17. Not a 70. A 7.
Single digits. Yeah.
And I was talking to my recruiter about it. He's like, yeah, I'm about to have a tough conversation with her. And I was like, oh no. Because that was like I didn't know that it, like the grading scale. I mean, it's still kind of gibberish to me now. But when I talk to most people, we're kind of biased because we were in the SIGINT community. It's mostly relatively intelligent people. But, people were like, yeah, I got like 89s or I got like 92, 95. And then looking back on it, I'm like, that girl got a 7. What?
Yeah. The lowest I ever had was a 2.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I saw a picture of another recruiter friend of mine had somebody get a 1.
They had to have been throwing it. There's no way.
You would think.
No, there's no way. That person had to be like, my parents are making me do this. I really don't want to go. I'm just going to click all the wrong answers and we'll be good.
No, I had a kid that got a 3 and he was like, this is my lifelong dream. I've always wanted to be a Marine. This is it. This is what I want to do. This is my whole goal in life. I got a 3. And the thing is, if you take the ASVAB and you put B all the way down, you'll get like a 13. I got a 3.
Oh, that poor kid.
Yeah. Yeah, so the ASVAB is graded on a percentile. So you got a 99%, which means you scored higher than 99% of the population. So if they got a 3, that means they scored lower than 97% of the population. 97% of all people who have taken the ASVAB scored higher than them. Yeah. So
I am speechless. And know me, that does not happen.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing. And what really amazes me is, now the ASVAB isn't exactly like an elite test, right? It's not that hard. it's designed to see where your strengths are. So that's why you have questions about mechanical, electrical, clerical, mathematical, English. It's designed to see what you're good at.
Right.
Not necessarily how intelligent you are. I mean, there's a little bit of an intelligence factor, but it's mostly designed to see what you're good at. And the fact that people that get a 3 on the ASVAB continue to like operate motor vehicles and like pay bills and you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
A lot of it's just common sense.
So it would seem.
Yeah.
Dude,
but anyway, so
that. Oh my God.
Yeah. So because it is divided into those sections of aptitudes, there's also requirements for different jobs.
Of course.
If you want to be motor T, you love cars, you want to work on 7 tons, you want to drive trucks, you need to have a mechanical score of X or above. If you want to work in avionics, you want to work on the electrical systems of airplanes, you need to score X or above on the electrical category. So if you have somebody who's like, oh man, I just, I want to be combat camera. I've always wanted to be a photographer. I love graphic design. Terrific. More power to you. If you don't make the required score on the ASVAB, there's nothing I can do for you. Mm-hmm. So the job has to be available and you have to meet the requirements for it.
Yeah. Do you know of, feel free to plead the fifth if you need to, but do you know of like any, because the reason I ask this next question is because people, like I said, have this idea that recruiters, even if you kind of know or have an idea of like the quota system and that there are so many slots allocated, that a lot of them are just shady. They have this idea that that they just want to meet the quota, fill the slots, do whatever. And, once you're at boot camp, you're gone. Who cares? You're disposable. I'm not saying that many or even a lot of recruiters are like that, but does that happen where it's like kids are like, I want to go infantry, like, oh yeah, sure, killer, just sign the open contract and they'll give you infantry when you're out of boot camp. And then it's like, okay, cool, off to boot camp, see ya. And then they get cook at the end of boot camp or whatever, and then that's when they're like, my recruiter fucked me, where like he or she actually did. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, it does on occasion, and usually that's the people that they got histed, they wanted to be a drill instructor or a combat instructor, and they're like, man, like I hate working with these dumbass 17-year-old civilians who don't know anything. They're just kind of jaded about the whole process. It does happen occasionally, and I don't know anybody personally. I've worked with recruiters who did not want to be on recruiting duty, but they still wouldn't do that because they realize Marine Corps is small. I'm going to see this kid again,
Yeah.
And so generally those people that do that, they end up getting in trouble and kicked off recruiting duty for one thing or another. They won't get in trouble for doing that. There's technically nothing against the rules about doing that.
That's unreal.
However, well, yeah.
But I guess if you're giving a kid a contract and he's signing it, it's still his. If you're looking at it in a legal, pragmatic manner, that still is on them to read the contract.
Yes. Now, where they will get in trouble is when the kid gets to boot camp and the senior drill instructor says, you're a cook, and they say, no, I signed an infantry contract. And the drill instructor says, stand by. They call the recruiting office and they say, did this kid sign a infantry contract? Because the job is designated on the contract, right?
Right.
And at which point the boss gets involved and says, yes, they did. And they're saying, okay, well then why did this kid get assigned cook? And then you find out that the recruiter forged the kid's signature on a cook contract. That's where they get into trouble.
Oh, good. Well, good.
Yeah. So if the kid signs an open contract, or if they sign a contract for, if they sign the contract, that's what they get. But if they get a different job than what they signed for, that's where they can get into trouble. Now, the kid just not understanding the process, because I've had people, I've had people where they're like, I signed for an infantry contract. No, you didn't, man. But I wanted infantry. Okay, we had a whole conversation about artillery. We talked about this. Do you remember sitting down with me and I explained what artillery is? And then you signed the piece of paper that said artillery at the top? Well, I thought infantry worked with artillery. Okay, that's not my fault. If you understand a whole conversation, there's nothing I can do for you at that point, but the recruiters that do genuinely do shady shit are so few and far between. Usually what we find is that when people are dissatisfied, it's because they didn't understand something or they prioritized something else over it. Well, I want to leave sooner, so I'll take a different job.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend a prospective poolee do to prepare for dealing with a recruiter other than research?
Yeah, so lots of research. I would say stay off of web forums. Web forums are the worst. They are awful. I can't tell you how many times I have people come in and they're like, well, I read on Reddit. And I'm like, oh my God, what did you read? Well, I read that deployments are 2 years long. Oh, did you read about unaccompanied PCSs to Japan? Is that what you read about? Oh, I thought they were talking about deployments. Okay, there we go. So you just didn't know what you're, right? They're the worst. Or it's people just straight up not knowing what they're talking about, or somebody's talking about the Army and they think it applies to all military. Like, just don't get on web forums because it's just going to confuse you. But the other thing I would say is be honest. Be honest with your recruiter. Don't try and pull one over on your recruiter. Don't try and lie to your recruiter, sneak something by your recruiter. Be honest with them, and then stick to what's important to you. So for me, when I went in, being a linguist was what was important to me. And they tried multiple times. They're like, I know you're super gung-ho. I know you're super motivated. I know you want to go to boot camp like yesterday. We can send you to boot camp and it'll be on an XYZ contract. Yes, I was motivated. Yes, I wanted to go as soon as possible, but it was very important to me that I be a linguist. And so I stuck to that. And I said, no, yes, I want to go as soon as possible, but more importantly, I want to be a linguist. So you give me the earliest boot camp date available as a linguist, because jobs are also tied to ship dates. It's a whole process.
Yeah. Well, you also had the perspective and the maturity level to know what you want and have the discipline to say like, no, thank you. I will wait for what I know I want. Whereas like, me at 17 years old, like I had a vague idea that I wanted to be Intel, and there was nothing particularly like, there was like a little bit of an ego thing that drew me toward the Marine Corps versus the Coast Guard or something. Not to bag on the Coast Guard, but like, when I got to the recruiting station, it had an office for every branch. And I think it was like it was either a Friday or a Saturday, like mid-afternoon, business hours. Coast Guard was closed. Air Force was closed. Navy was like, be back later, time TBD. And then I looked in the Army office and they were all like visibly obese. And then I looked in the Marine Corps office and there was like a recruit, like an RA that had just gotten back from boot camp that was like cranking out pull-ups on the pull-up bar out front. And I like peeked my head in the door and like all the dudes are wearing the like, dress blue Deltas or whatever, or I guess it was, I was thinking it was Deltas because it was, summertime-ish, springtime. And the guy sees me and he's like, you, get in here. I was like, me? And he's like, yeah, come here. I was like, okay. And I just kind of went in. But, you know, I was like, okay, well, the Army produces fat people, and then the other branches can't even bothered to be here on Friday. And I was like, well, you know, and then they had me with the $10,000, you know, linguist bonus. But, like, you know, there was no real, like, I didn't have any, like, I was joining the military because I didn't have this, like, intense desire to do anything, really. I was like, this will give me a few years to kind of figure myself out, grow up a little bit, learn how to be an adult, and, you know, kind of figure my shit out. So, you know, thankfully I had an honest recruiter. Like, the most, you know, like, dishonest thing that he did was tell me to say that I had never smoked weed. Like, you know, which is kind of par for the course, I feel. But, like, which I ended up admitting to in the moment of truth at boot camp anyway. But
oh no, oh, your recruiter got in so much trouble.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, well, whatever. But well, the thing is I was agonizing over it because I knew that there was going to be the SCI background check for my clearance, and it was no secret amongst everybody I knew that I liked smoking weed. Like, it was not privileged information. So, like, if a guy in a suit and an FBI ID badge was like, hey, so do you know if he ever smoked weed? Like, all of my 17-year-old shithead friends would be like, yeah, all the time. Like, you know, there was no way that was gonna, you know, sneak past the FBI. So I was like, well, I should probably just own up to this now. I do feel bad if he got in trouble, but whatever.
He got in a ton of trouble.
Really? Why?
Yeah. If a kid pops at MEPS or pops on the moment of truth or at any point during boot camp, the recruiter gets in a lot of trouble.
Oof.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't really think about that, actually. Damn. I just didn't want to lose, because I just didn't want to lose my, you know, my potential clearance and then my job and then the $10,000 that I was promised.
Yeah, no, I gotcha. And that's why a lot of recruiters get kind of bitter, because they're like, you know, I've been a Marine for 8, 9, 10 years. I'm not about to put my whole career on the line for some dipshit kid who's probably going to say dumb shit at boot camp anyway. And so that's, you know, that sometimes they're like, you know, no, fuck you, dude. Like, I'm not doing shit for you because I could lose my career over it. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it ended up, I mean, he was still in the Marine Corps last I looked, so I mean, I'm sure he's fine.
Oh yeah. No, it's like, he's not going to get kicked out, not for something like that. But he probably got like a I forget what's called, like page 11.
Oh, yeah, whatever. He's fine. But but you know, thank God he didn't try to pull a fast one on me with like an O2 contract or something after saying that I wanted to be a linguist or whatever. Like, I can't even tell you how many. I mean, you know how many addendums you had to sign to do the HK or whatever, the linguist package with the bonus. I had to sign one of those things like fucking every 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
So, you know, but yeah, I got lucky because if, you know, I didn't know shit. I was a 17-year-old kid. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know anything. I knew I like generally didn't want to do infantry because 100-pound packs, no thanks. You know, like, but if he was like, yeah, you'd be really good at avionics, I probably would have been like, you're probably right. You know, planes, neat. Like, I don't know. So, and
then you would have gone and done avionics, and it's all you would have known, and then you would have had your experience and never known anything about the linguist life.
Yeah. But, you know, if I was going into it, like, after signing the paperwork, like, thinking I was signing the paperwork, like, you know, steeling myself for language school, and then, you know, all of a sudden I'm off to wherever to learn about electrical systems and jets and helicopters, I'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You know, even that moment in boot camp of like, you're an electrical guy, I'd be like, no, I'm a linguist. And he's like, no, you're an electrical guy. That probably would have left a not great taste in my mouth about recruiters.
Yeah.
So I get that, like, you know, preparing yourself and being as educated as you can be and having that that perspective and that self-discipline is important. I hope that, people can find that, because I feel like, a lot of everybody I knew until I was in the Marine Corps, everybody I knew that was joining was in essentially the same place I was in, just ripe for the picking of, not understanding a contract, or like, what you were saying where you thought everybody was Army infantry. If somebody had tried to explain the difference between artillery, infantry, tanks, and LAR to me at 17 years old, I would be like, what? What do you mean?
Yeah.
So, but, you could have gotten me to sign any of those contracts, and I would have expected it to be any one of those other ones interchangeably. So, I hope.
Yeah.
And it's kind of tough that you can't go to web forums, because I feel like that's how people do all their research now.
Yeah.
Or think they're doing research.
They think they're doing research. Yeah. And there certainly is. I mean, if you go to a web forum, just take it with a whole salt lick. You know what I mean? There's people in there who have never served, right? There's people on web forums that went into the Marine Corps office, got a 7 on the ASVAB, and then now spend their day on the web forum talking about how, they were going to be a Marine, but they decided not to because they would like totally punch a DI out if they got in their face. Right?
Yeah.
That's who's filling out web forums. It's not successful Marines who have navigated their way through a career and know the ins and outs of the process. That's not who's spending their time on web forums.
Is it possible to, I don't want to say get a second opinion, but is it possible to like go to one recruiter, get as much information as you can, and then go to another one and I don't want to say fact check, but like, see where you're at?
Yeah. Yeah, you absolutely can.
Might have to drive a little bit, but.
You might have to drive a little bit, and you're probably going to cause a rift between them because they share a database. So if you go to one recruiter, they're going to put your conversation into the database so that the next time you talk to them, they can pull up their notes and go, oh, that's right, we talked about you wanting to go to college, right? Everybody shares a database. So if you go to another recruiter, that recruiter is going to put your name in the database, and your conversation with the other recruiter is going to pop up. And so they, you might cause some like kind of a rift and some distrust at that point. But if you want to fact check, like I said, just be honest with the recruiter. If you want to fact check, go into a second office and say, hey, hi, I just had a conversation yesterday with so-and-so. I just want to double check some information. Not that I don't trust them. I just kind of want to see a different perspective. What's your opinion of the infantry? What do you think would be better between tanks and artillery? Just let them know, like, I'm here for a second opinion. And you'll kind of solve the rift problem. With that,
because that way they're not thinking like, oh, I have to, get this guy started or whatever. It's okay. Yeah. That's what I meant, because like, if you can't trust Reddit, which makes sense, a lot that my fear is that if you're 17 or 18 or even like 19, 20, and you just kind of, where you were and where I was until recently, just kind of aimlessly doing jobs, like not really sure what you want to do. And, you're just like, well, this might be good. I don't really know too much about myself or the military. Like, let me just go kind of see what's up. If you're that kind of person, like I would not have had the like innate inquisitiveness to like go to the library or, find like, or like order something on Amazon, about the recruiting process to understand it. Like I would go into I went into a recruiter's office, thinking I heard that recruiters had been kind of like shady, or they were capable of being shady. So, I went in there, part of me thinking like, okay, this guy's word is law. And the other part is like, but, he just wants me to sign up. So,
Yeah.
I'll be honest with, I'm hoping he's being honest with me, but I don't really have any other frame of reference. But, I went into that thinking that, but like, I wasn't going to do the due diligence to, find like unbiased, like really reputable sources to discover whatever. So,
Yeah. Yeah, you can always call another recruiter, go into another recruiter's office. The other thing that you can do, a lot of people don't understand, is they can say why. You can ask why. If somebody says, hey, listen, I know you want to go to boot camp as soon as possible, but I can't send you for 6 months. Why? Well, because boot camp is a first come, first serve, and the first available bunk at boot camp is in 6 months. Okay, thank you for letting me know. If one opens up sooner, can you please keep me in mind for it? Absolutely will do, right? You can ask a recruiter why at any point. If they say, listen, I know you wanted to be combat camera, but I think cook would be better for you. Why? Well, because you didn't make the score you need. It's ask them why. If they're telling you something, ask them why. And just be honest with them and stick to what's important to you. Generally, as recruiters, we want to do the best for everybody, but I don't know you. I met you a week ago. What do I know about your hopes and dreams and aspirations? We talked about it, but honestly, I don't know what's more important to you, that you be a linguist or that you leave as soon as possible. You say you want a college degree, but is that really your priority? Or is it your priority to travel the world for 4 years so you can come back and use your GI Bill to go to college when you're done with the Marine Corps? Yes, you want a college degree, but do you want it while you're in, or do you want it after you get out? It's those kind of little details that can help a recruiter make a more like fulfilling experience for somebody. But if all you do, if you're not honest with your recruiter and you don't tell them what your priorities are and what's important to you, they can't help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So research, be honest, be inquisitive.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Take ownership of your process.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's basically for anything in life. I mean, I know we're talking about recruiting, but
yeah, you're not wrong.
Take ownership, man. Take ownership.
Yeah.
It's a huge thing.
That makes sense. What problems do you see arise the most with potential recruits? Is it like, because I was listening to an interview with Tim Kennedy, and I don't know how familiar you are with him, but he, does a lot of work. He's a contractor with SOCOM basically. And he was saying that like SOCOM is hurting for people. Like so badly, because so many people in the United States now don't meet selection standards. Like they literally can't join. Does that happen a lot for you?
Yeah, physical fitness is the biggest thing. The fitness level of the United States is atrocious. And, people look at the Marine Corps as like this super elite thing. Yeah, we're higher than the other branches, but it's really not that, it's not unattainable. It's not impossible. It's actually not that hard to get to where you need to be to survive in the Marine Corps, and so many people are at such a low level of physical fitness. I once saw a girl, so I don't know if they did this when you went to MEPS, but they do it nowadays, where when you go to MEPS, they have you do the pull-ups and the crunches just to see where you're at that point. And they may not let you sign a contract if you're not, like, if you can't do a single pull-up, they may not let you sign a contract until you can, just to show some kind of progress, right? Because they're not going to save a boot camp spot for you only to find out that when the date comes, you still can't do a single pull-up.
Yeah.
So,
and the minimum is what, like 3?
It's 1.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. So if they're saving a boot camp spot for you and holding somebody else back because of it, it would be better that they just don't enlist you and they don't give you a boot camp date until you can do that pull-up. then we'll get you enlisted and put a boot camp date on you.
That makes sense.
So yeah, so they have them do it at MEPS. A lot of times they do the pull-ups and the crunches. I watched a girl, she was 18 years old, senior in high school, should be in good shape, right? Like you're young, you're 18, there's no reason for you to be out of shape. In 2 minutes, she could not do 10 crunches.
Damn.
She had 2 minutes and could not do 10 crunches. And you think about like, okay, you sit up in bed, right? You stand, you hold yourself upright during the day. You like stand up from chairs. And you can't do 10 crunches. I give you 2 minutes and you can't do 10. Like that's the kind of stuff where it's like, how do I even work with this? You know, I've seen guys who get up on a pull-up bar and I'm like, okay, begin. Go ahead, start. And whenever you're ready. And they're like, I'm trying. And they don't even wiggle. Like their elbows don't even bend. And it's like, holy shit. And for me, I look at that and I'm like, Marine Corps aside, dude, how are you going to save yourself in a fire?
Yeah,
like
for real.
The kind of stuff that I consider. But that's what we're working with. You know, I've always wanted to be a Marine. Cool. You have a lot of work to do. And a lot of people don't want to do that work. It's a phrase I've kind of developed in my time as a recruiter is all glory, no guts. They want the badass, they want the uniform, they want the prestige and the reputation that comes with being a Marine, but they don't want to do the work that it takes to get that prestige.
Yeah. That's kind of just how it is now though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating. And it's frustrating for those of us who have put in the work. And, you know, we do believe in the standards and we do believe in the reputation of the Marine Corps. Seeing people who just want to come in and have it handed to them, it is very frustrating to see.
Do you have a lot of like drug DQs and like tattoo DQs?
Tattoos are huge. Yeah. A lot of tattoo DQs because what's popular now is behind the ears and like on the wrist line and on the hands. It's really popular. So I have a lot of those DQs, but surprisingly, like, yeah, I'm in Colorado, I'm in Denver, I'm in Boulder. I've had one drug DQ in the 2.5, 3 years I've been out here.
For weed, I'm assuming?
Cocaine. Yeah.
Wow, you must be did he or she admit to doing it or did he pop for it?
They admitted to doing it. So they went to MEPS and the doctor was like, you ever done drugs? And they're like, yeah, cocaine all the time. And it was not like your recruiter where I was like, listen, just don't tell anybody you did cocaine. Okay. Cocaine's a big one. And so they came back at me and they were like, the fuck are you doing? And I was like, you honestly believe that somebody told me they did cocaine and I sent them to MEPS? Like, no. Yeah. That dude never told me. And he didn't. And he came back and he was like, well, they said I could get a waiver. And I was like, not from me, you can't. No. Like, you're going to lie to me. You're like, I asked you if you did drugs and you said no. And like, you're going to lie to me. You're going to lie to me about something like that. I'm not working with you. And he ended up joining the Army. Yeah. Like 2 months later, the Army recruiter came down, knocked on my door and was like, hey, do you happen to have the paperwork for this person? I busted out laughing and I was like, sure do. Here you go.
And they sent him?
Mm-hmm.
Did he just lie to them or were they like, it's cool?
No, they were going to run his waiver. They were going to get him a waiver for cocaine use.
Damn. I mean, I kind of understand, like, here's another question. For the waivers, is it like kind of a recruiter discretion thing where like if someone's like, yeah, I did blow like, you know, a couple times at a couple house parties, it just wasn't really for me. Like, is that when you would give them a waiver, or is it like zero tolerance, no, no, no? Or, I mean, obviously it's one thing if they're like, drugs, love them, do them all the time, I'm on blow right now. Like, you're like, okay, get the fuck out of here. But
yeah. Yeah, it's recruiter discretion. Basically, you're requesting an exception to policy because the policy is zero tolerance. So I'm requesting an exception to policy. So basically what that means is I'm going to vouch for this kid. I'm going to put my name on it, and I'm going to vouch for him that he's going to be a good Marine. He or she's going to be a good Marine. So
if they like fuck up and pop for drugs later, does that come back on you at all?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Not once they're in the fleet. So
okay.
Yeah, so the way it works is that anytime you're in the delayed entry program or you're in boot camp, it's going to come back directly on me if you fuck up. Once you get to MCT, it's no longer on me unless it's a matter of your contract. So let's say I forged a high school diploma for you, right? I took somebody else's high school diploma. I put your name on it because you didn't actually graduate. And I was like, hey, no big deal. Like, you got a 79 on the ASVAB. Clearly you're intelligent. You know, I'm just going to make you a high school diploma, basically, and we'll get you in the Marine Corps. Nobody will ever know. And then you get to MCT, MOS school, somewhere in the fleet, and you're like, no, I never graduated high school. That's going to come back on me because that's part of your contract.
Oh.
But if you get to the fleet and they catch you with drugs in your pocket, that has nothing to do with me. Even if you had a drug waiver, that has nothing to do with me. That's you fucking up on your own volition. Yeah.
That's good. That makes sense. Do people do that? Like forge documents like that?
Not kids will try it.
Yeah.
Kids will do it. Yeah.
There's no way to verify something like that, like a high school diploma?
So we have something called an education verification form. We take it to the high school, and the high school has to verify that you did graduate. It has to be signed off by, like, you know, the counselor or the principal or something like that.
I vaguely remember having to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's all sorts of like checks and balances and stuff for that stuff, because it used to be that you could just walk in, say you were 17, and they're like, wow, you look young, but all right, if you say so.
Yeah.
You know, it's you have these stories of like 14-year-olds.
Like Audie Murphy, like 12 or something. He's like 5'1", and he's like, I'm ready to be a Marine.
Yeah. Yeah. Jackie is my favorite. I cannot remember his last name for the life of me. I just remember it's Jackie. He's known as the indestructible man. He was on like Iwo Jima, and his parachute didn't open, and he's been shot, and his ex-wife tried to kill him twice, and the dude will not die.
Jesus.
Yeah. Anyway, he went and joined the Marine Corps and went to Iwo Jima and was awarded a Medal of Honor. And when he was at his mom saw the Medal of Honor ceremony in the newspaper or on TV or something like that, and she called the Marine Corps, and she was like, that's my son. He ran away 2 years ago. We had no idea where he was. And she made him leave the Marine Corps and come back home and go back to school. And he started his first day of high school wearing his Medal of Honor. He was like, fine. Yeah.
What
he was
a gangster.
You make me go to high school? I'm wearing my Medal of Honor on the first day.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Especially if,
so
he won it when he was what, like 14 then probably?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. So stuff like that is the reason why we have verification now.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's mental.
Yeah.
I mean, it was something like Morgan Freeman was like 14, or not Morgan Freeman. Actually, I think it was. But he like lied and said he was 16 to play like a 17-year-old guy in Apocalypse Now or something like that.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
That's
or Mila Kunis was 14 on that 70s show.
Yeah. And she said something about like, I will be 18. And they just took it to mean that she was like 17 3/4 when really she meant like, no, eventually in the future I'm going to be 18 years old.
She's like, I didn't lie,
Yeah,
I will.
actually, I didn't lie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's like saying I'm dying. You're like, really? When? You're like, someday. I don't know.
eventually. Yeah, yeah. So we have all sorts of verifications and stuff for that.
That's good. What other problem? So it's mostly just like a physical fitness thing? Is that people are just too out of
That's
shape?
Yeah, that's the biggest. Physical fitness is the biggest thing, and then the other thing is kids just being kids. Like if you come into the delayed entry program and I tell you not to do drugs, and then the school police officer catches you with weed in your bag, nothing I can do about that, man. I can't get you a waiver. You did it. If you smoked weed before you came to my program, nothing I can do about that, right? That was you and your life. But when you came into my program and I told you not to do drugs anymore because you're in the delayed entry program and you're committed to go to boot camp, and then you get caught with drugs in your backpack, I can't save you.
Yeah.
So, but that's few and far between. Really, the biggest thing we see is kids' weight and physical fitness.
And is there like, and to rectify that, you would do the thing where you just like wait to get them a boot camp date until they can do something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So either we make them get down to a certain weight or get a certain IST score before we even let them go to MEPS and raise their right hand. Or we will roll back their boot camp date or just give them an ultimatum. Like, listen, your boot camp date is January 1st. If you're not where you need to be by December 1st, you're not going. I'm kicking you out of the program. I'm giving somebody else your boot camp date. It's not happening.
Does that happen often where people just can't hack it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We kick people out of the program all the time.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, especially because, you only have them for however many months. You can only do so much physical training in that time. And even then, I mean, my recruiter's office did PT like maybe twice a week.
Right.
So you would have to, my recruiters, I wasn't in great shape when I enlisted. I was thin, but like I wasn't like, in super good condition. So like, I had to learn how to do pull-ups. Like I played lacrosse so I could run and, stuff like that. But like I'd never pulled anything.
Yeah.
Like I played defense. So when you play defense in lacrosse, you bring your hands together on the stick and you push. So I could push really good. But, and my crunches were, it's crunches, but pull-ups were like rough. And so yeah, I had to do pull-ups like all the time. I had to get a pull-up bar for my house. So, but again, I was going to boot camp. I was going to PT at the recruiting station like twice a week, but I had to do stuff myself in order to
it takes a lot of self-initiative. Yeah.
I just wanted to leave. I just wanted to
I just want to get the fuck out.
Well, and again, it comes back to the fact that I was treating it like a tryout. Like I really honestly thought like, if I'm not ready for this, like I will fail and I'm going to have to come home.
That's a good mentality to have. Yeah.
Well, I didn't know. I was like, if I go to boot camp and, I'm not strong enough to do what I need to do, like I'm going to get sent home and it's going to be humiliating. I didn't know that you could just get rolled back almost indefinitely, but I don't think I knew. I think I knew like one or two guys from my platoon that were like actually gonna be kicked off the depot.
Yeah, it happens. It happens. They don't roll indefinitely, but they're gonna do everything they can to make you into a Marine. They're not gonna let you go easily.
Yeah, I mean, we had one guy who got rolled into our platoon because he had suffered nerve damage in his shoulder from doing like fucking, I forget what that's called, but the drill movement where you like stick your hand out and you
the like form for PT one.
It's like the spacing one where like you put your arm out
Extend.
and you. What's that?
Yeah. Extend.
Something like that. But he,
Yeah.
from holding his arm up like that, like he had like nerve damage in his shoulder, and he or like he pinched it somewhere,
Yeah.
and it just like got fucked up. And he was in the rehab platoon for so long that he was originally in one of my senior drill instructor's platoons like 3 or 4 cycles prior, rehab the whole time, and then got re-rolled back into the same instructor's platoon, second phase, and then graduated with us.
Yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah. That's a long ass time.
Yeah, he was on the depot for something like 11 months, like, which I would probably kill myself. Like,
yeah, I can't imagine. It's just, I can't.
yeah.
Can we pause? Because I got to take the boys to the vet.
I mean, if we've covered everything I wanted to cover, is there anything else that you wanted to? I mean, I asked all the questions I could think of a recruiter. You've provided wonderful answers, very informative.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, mostly I would just say that I am a recruiter. I've been doing this for a while. I've been on both the officer and the enlisted side. So if anybody wants to, if they want me to look up their recruitment file, I can look it up. I can give you some insight on that. If you want to know, why did my recruiter do X, Y, Z? I can give you a most likely answer. If you just have questions about the recruitment process in general, if you're interested in, coming back in, I don't know if you know Kyle McElroy. He got out and then he went back into the reserves. So he's in the reserves now. Yeah. If you want to know about that, if you want to know about going to the officer route, like if you got out and you went to college and then like now you're in college or you got your degree, you can come back in as an officer. So, I work with a bunch of guys who got out on the enlisted side, went to school, and then they were like, oh, shit, I kind of miss it. I want to find a way to get back into it, but I don't want to go back enlisted. That we can talk about the officer route. If you just want to know, like, how the hell did my, she who shall not be named, like, how the fuck did she get here?
Yeah.
If you want insight and background into anything related to recruiting, I've had Marines call me because they have, a friend's kid or sister or brother that's going in the Marine Corps, and they want to fact check the recruiter. I've done that, like, hey, my buddy's sister is trying to go in the Marine Corps. They're telling her that she doesn't qualify for XYZ job. She thinks she does. Can you tell me why they're not letting her have this job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I can do that.
Sounds good. I'm definitely, I'll link your social media. You do most of your correspondence through Instagram or email or?
Yeah, Instagram's the best way to get me.
Okay. So yeah, I'll link your, yeah, perfect. I'll link your Instagram and the social media and stuff. And, most everybody who listens, I think, is veterans mostly predominantly. But yeah, I've considered going back in a couple times. So like, I'm sure somebody has. So yeah, I'll make sure.
I won't name names, but we have friends that who you are. Get into the Damoso's office.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'll definitely I'll put your stuff up there and so people can reach out to you. But I'm so glad you came on, man. This was really fun.
Yeah. I wish it could be longer. Like, I'm sorry I have pets that have to get shots.
No, it's okay. Take care of your pets. I think we've been doing this for coming up on 3 hours, so time flies.
Yeah, a little bit.
Time flies when you're having fun, huh? I'm sure we'll do this again once. You and me both, for better and for worse. But but like I said, my original plan was to field questions from listeners and then have you kind of work through them. So I'm sure I'll have you back on to do that, even for like an hour-long Q&A or something. But
for sure.
But thanks again.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. Anytime. I'm happy to do it. And then if you want to do a whole episode on military marriage,
that would be fun.
I've seen it. I've done it all.
I'm definitely about it.
I've been a spouse. I can officially tell you, it is not the hardest job in the Corps.
You're going to make a lot of people mad with that.
I know. But listen, I've been a military spouse. I've been dual military. I've been divorced. I've been married. I've dated in the military. All of it.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are the preeminent source on military relationships. But yeah, we definitely will. And I do want to get you on for another episode about the sharp stuff that you did.
Oh yeah, UVA, sexual assault, all that.
Yeah, I would, especially now with the Vanessa Guillen thing popping off and the new legislation that's coming off about that. I'd really like to get your insight on that at some point. So
yeah,
because that was I wish we could have gotten into that, because I feel like that was a really key and important part of your service. So I would like to touch on that at some point.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. And I was a UVA, but I've actually done a lot of work with just women in the service in general. All aspects of that. It is a many-sided gem. Yeah, we can talk about that for another 3 hours.
Okay, we'll do it. But awesome. So take care of the puppies, and and I will talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, bud.
Absolutely. Bye. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this episode with Abby. Again, I know it was a little different than the episodes that I've done previously, as she's still in, so most of the conversation had to do with things involving time in the Marine Corps and the process of getting in. So if you know anybody who's planning on joining, or like Abby mentioned, even if you had questions about your recruitment process, she has graciously opened up her inbox, and I'm opening up mine to be able to field questions that we can answer when she comes back on the show. So you can either send them to me at the Instagram page at hutb.podcast, or to the email I set up, which is just hangingupthebootspodcast, all one word, lowercase, at gmail.com. Or you can send them to Abby. She does most of her correspondence on Instagram, and her handle is iron.seitz.marine. So it's iron.seitz.marine. And she'll be able to answer any questions that are pressing, and you guys don't want to bother waiting for the next episode. But I am going to have her on to discuss her time as a sexual assault advocate and women's rights advocate in the military, especially what's been going on with Vanessa Guillen. If you're not up to speed on that, I highly recommend it, brushing up on what's been going on with that. But all in all, I really enjoyed my time chatting with Abby. It was really great to catch up with her, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So thank you very much, you guys, and I'll see you next time. You know you're more than